Chapter 768. I thought I was doing it for her own good, so she would definitely forgive me after knowing the truth. I was mentally prepared to accept all the punishments. I thought I was prepared. Leah recalled those days when he was not forgiven. Gu Mingming kept calling him her ex-boyfriend in the cave, asking him to maintain his composure and not pester her. Every word was like a sharp claw, tearing at his heart to this day. This pain constantly reminded him not to do anything that would upset Gu Mingming. He could not bear the consequences. Raising his head, he looked at Carter as if he had been through it all. Leah said slowly, all punishments including her tears and determination. What if the only punishment she can give you is to tell you with tears that she forgives you and doesn't hate you anymore, so that you don't need to disturb her anymore? Are you also prepared to accept it? All these were clearly just a few words from Leah, but Carter felt as if his chest was being viciously torn apart by something. That pair of clear eyes were filled with tears. It was as if the scene of her saying goodbye was right before his eyes. In that instant he felt as if every drop of blood in his body had solidified. He froze on the spot, unable to move. Leah chuckled. See, you are not prepared. And you can't bear it either. Carter's temples were throbbing. He was silent for a long time before he found his voice again. Like a drowning man who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw, he said in a trembling voice, "But you were forgiven in the end, didn't you?" Leah looked at the mark on Gu Mingming's ear tenderly, his eyes filled with so much joy and treasure. He reached out and caressed Gu Mingming's little earlobe, then looked at Carter with some arrogance in his long and narrow eyes, saying, "The difference between you and me is that other than Mingming, I will not listen to any other females. Everything I did wrong was all my own idea while you listened to Dora and hurt Melinda. This is the fundamental difference. Understand? I just don't want Melinda to leave me." Carter was scared witless by Lee's words. There was nothing going on between him and Dora, but why did he feel so guilty after hearing Lee's words? Lee's face was filled with disdain as he sneered. "Oh, your desires are above her happiness, seems like you don't like her that much." "No, it's not like that." Kite wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. Gu Mingming smiled. This Carter was still too young to compete with Leah in terms of wits. Waving his hand he said, "Carter, you must first be clear about what you want. Do you want to keep Melinda by your side, or do you want her to like you, fall in love with you and accept you?" Kite was at a loss and asked, "Is there a difference?" Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Of course there is. There is a huge difference between voluntary and involuntary. The former represents happiness, while the latter represents torture." "How can there be no difference?" Carter said without hesitation, "I want her to be happy." Gu Mingming nodded and said, "The first step is to clear her name. Make up for the mistakes you've made in the past, only then will you have the qualifications to stand in front of her and pursue her again." Carter nodded and said, "All right, I will now go back and announce that Melinda never stole anything." "Never." Gu Mingming held her forehead as she leaned on Elvis's shoulder and looked at Leah, giving him a pleading look. Chapter 769. Leah brought Carter to one side and guided him. Gu Mingming could not bear to continue listening to Carter's words. He looked so smart, but why did he sound like a retard when it came to relationships? Nestled in Elvis's arms, Gu Mingming sighed. "Luckily I met you then, or else I would have been angered to death." Elvis's eyes were filled with indulgence and love. He kissed Gu Mingming's eyes and whispered in her ear with a hoarse and reserved voice, "Silly girl, I'm the one who should rejoice." That night, Carter brought Leah to listen to his lessons. Wuxia did not return and was curled up in some tree in the forest. Ian's presence was as low as ever. Meanwhile, Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and listened to her count the stars one by one. She told him interesting stories about the constellations that he did not understand. Her voice was so gentle that he could not sleep the entire night. He did not even want to miss the sound of her breathing. The next morning, Wuxia brought back fresh fruits while Ian strangely brought back many bird eggs. Seeing Gu Mingming looking at him as though he was a pervert, he snorted coldly. "Even our eagle owl tribe doesn't have any descendants, how can these uncivilized dumb birds reproduce?" Gu Mingming's eyes were filled with disdain. Gu Mingming clicked her tongue and sighed at how black-bellied Ian was. His "if I don't have a good time, no one can have a good time" emphasis was too evil. But even so, Gu Mingming knew that Ian had gone to retrieve these bird eggs because Leah had instructed him in the morning. Gu Mingming was still nestled in Elvis's arms. She did not know why, but she just felt that something had happened to Elvis during the day she went to the deep sea. There was clearly nothing different, but Gu Mingming knew that Elvis was very uneasy, as if he was very attached to her. But he did not want to say, so Gu Mingming could only choose not to ask. Gu Mingming bit on the fruits Wabiai had brought back and stretched her neck to wait for Leah to cook the bird eggs. The eggs were not cooked yet, but a few familiar faces came up from the sea. Fei Rui was holding Melinda's hand as he ran over. Looking at the smiles on their faces, Gu Mingming thought to herself that Carter was really efficient. He had only returned late last night and this morning, he had already cleared Melinda's name. Lord Envoy. Fei Rui and Melinda were the same. Their skin was so fair that Gu Mingming could not bear to let them bask in the sun. It was as if the sun could melt them. Meanwhile, Fei Rui and Melinda's cheeks were flushed red. Mermaids did not have sweat glands, so their skin was still dry. However, their panting clearly told Gu Mingming how much they wanted to be the first to tell this good news to her. Gu Mingming patted Fei Rui's shoulder. Speak slowly, it's all right. Fei Rui took a deep breath. His cold, star-like eyes shone with a bright light. He was so happy that he almost cried, "My sister is free." Gu Mingming maintained a polite smile. Although this news, she had already known about it last night, she still congratulated Marlene happily. She passed one of the fruits in her hands to Marlene and said, "Here, this is for you, to celebrate your freedom." Chapter 770. Gu Mingming looked behind her. Indeed, there was a familiar head peeking over from behind the rock. It clearly wanted to stick close to her but could only watch from afar. It looked rather pitiful. "You come here for a moment." Gu Mingming pointed at the head behind the rock. Carter was taken aback but still swam out from behind the rock. He transformed into his human form and went ashore. His eyes were fixed on Melinda. Naturally, he didn't miss the way Melinda shivered and hid behind Fei Rui the moment he appeared. She was still afraid of him, great messenger. Carter lowered his head and averted his gaze. He didn't want to see Melinda panicking, but he couldn't help but want to get closer to her. Gu Mingming ignored the conflict between the two. She just said to herself, "We want to eat seafood. You and Fei Rui can help me fish some." Carter nodded. Yes. Fei Rui wasn't willing to speak to Carter, but Gu Mingming was the messenger of the beast deity. If she hadn't come, Melinda would still be locked up. Although this matter had nothing to do with Gu Mingming on the surface, Fei Rui knew that if Gu Mingming had not stepped forward, Carter would not have let Melinda go no matter how much evidence they had to prove her innocence. So it was his honor to be able to do something for Gu Mingming. Although it was insignificant compared to what Gu Mingming had done for him and his sister, it still made him feel better. So even though his partner was Carter, Fei Rui didn't reject Gu Mingming's request. He stood up and swam with Carter towards the deep sea. Gu Mingming liked pretty girls, especially those who were beautiful and kind. Seeing that Melinda was holding the fruit without eating it, Gu Mingming smiled and asked, "You don't like to eat this kind of fruit?" Melinda shook her head. "I have never eaten it before." Gu Mingming turned to Wabiai. "Is this a fruit that is hard to find?" Wabiai pointed to the nearby forest. "There are many of them." Melinda blushed slightly. She lowered her head. "This is my first time coming ashore?" Gu Mingming grinned and held Melinda's little hand. "I am very honored to be able to accompany you on such a special day." Melinda smiled sweetly. She was a little shy and bashful. "Thank you, great messenger." Gu Mingming picked up her fruit and took a bite. Then she signaled Melinda to have a taste too. The beauty ate with great elegance. That small bite was like kissing a fruit. Looking at the half-eaten fruit in her hand, Gu Mingming suddenly started to doubt her own feminine nature. After mating for half a year, had she forgotten to maintain her image in front of Elvis and Leah? Is it really okay to eat like this? Gu Mingming thought about it and started to take small bites of the fruit. But Elvis pressed her hand down and pressed the fruit down. Then he kissed her lips and said, "I like your original appearance. Don't force yourself to learn from others." Gu Mingming blushed. She did not expect Elvis to care about such a small detail. Come to think of it, when she was pregnant with Huda and his brothers, Elvis was the one who carried them to the toilet. What kind of pathetic state had he not seen before? However, he had seen her at her worst, most disheveled and most unkempt, but he still loved her. Chapter 771. Melinda told Gu Mingming what had happened last night. It was roughly the same as what Leah had told her. Dora had voluntarily returned the giant fish clan's treasure because she was afraid of the beast deity's curse and confessed to framing Melinda for stealing it. Melinda was imprisoned by the giant fish clan as a slave. Her fate was to be used as a currency to exchange for resources with other tribes. To a female, this was not much of a punishment. After all, she was still a treasure in the hands of other tribes. After all, she was a female. But this cleared Melinda of the crime of stealing, and the Giant Fish clan could no longer imprison her. Moreover, as compensation for wrongly accusing her, Carter also returned all the territories of the Mermaid clan that they had lost to him in a challenge. Everything returned to its original position. It seemed that everything had returned to its original point. But Carter's feelings for Melinda grew stronger every day. And Melinda's fear of Carter also grew stronger. Gu Mingming almost burst out laughing after hearing Melinda's description. The beast deity's curse? What the hell was that? So good at making things up. While Gu Mingming and Melinda were chatting, Fei Rui and Carter had also returned with seafood. When Gu Mingming saw the fish Carter had brought back, 10,000 curses ran through her mind. Yes, she said she wanted to eat seafood and fish. But there was no need for you to bring back a whale, right? Gu Mingming's jaw almost dropped to the ground as she watched Carter slowly drag the whale by its tail onto the shore. Big brother, your brain circuit is so king fast. Besides Gu Mingming, Melinda was also shocked. Although Carter had not expressed anything when he had dragged the fish onto the shore, Melinda had already inwardly thought of him as cool and cruel. Her little body trembled as she gripped Gu Mingming's hand so tightly that her fingertips turned white. Power equals charm. This was definitely a male's hallucination after his brain was caught in a door. Wabi-ai, you can eat that fish. Gu Mingming pointed at the whale Carter had brought back. Eat it in the sea. Don't let me see you eating. I'm scared. Since Gu Mingming didn't call him little shit, Wabi-ai happily walked to Carter's side and dragged the whale back into the sea without another word. Carter had no idea what was going on. But looking at Leah and Gu Mingming's disdainful expression and Melinda's fearful expression, he knew he had messed up again. He only hoped that she would see that he was very strong and could protect her. Why did it backfire? Frustrated, Kate stood on the spot, not knowing what to do. Fei Rui ignored him and sat beside Gu Mingming and Melinda. He placed a few shellfish on the ground and said, "These shellfish are very delicious, have a taste." With that said, Fei Rui crushed the shell with a kacha, and the shell immediately shattered into pieces. The flesh of the shell was still squirming, and the scene was somewhat disgusting. Gu Mingming sighed and said, "A gentleman stays away from the kitchen." Fei Rui did not understand. He tilted his head and waited for Gu Mingming's explanation. Gu Mingming looked at his clear eyes, then at the pile of crushed shellfish meat in his hand. She smiled and explained gently, "It means to scram and play at the side." Fei Rui lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong. He thought that Gu Mingming didn't like the shellfish and wanted to take it away too. Seeing his aggrieved look, Gu Mingming's heart softened. "Put it down, I will handle it." Aside from the topic, Gu Mingming, I always thought that Colin was the epitome of inexperience in love. But after meeting you, I finally understand. Haha, being unromantic is just child's play. Carter? What did I do wrong? Chapter 772. She got Leah to start a fire and placed a flat stone slab on top of it. She threw the shells on top to heat them up and soon they all opened up. There was nothing dirty in the original marine products. Gu Mingming used simple seasonings to marinate them before using tree resin to skewer the shellfish. She had no choice. There were no stainless steel roasting pans here. She could only eat boiled shellfish after skewering them. Boiled oysters or whatever, TSK not interested. After Gu Mingming demonstrated the first skewer, the task of cooking was handed over to Leah. Gu Mingming was more interested in the shells themselves. The nameless shells glowed with 5 different colors, giving off a rainbow-like glow under the sunlight. Gu Mingming and Melinda each took one and couldn't bear to part with it. Especially when they found a good pearl in one of the shells, the 2 females were overjoyed as if they had discovered a new continent. The pearl was also colorful like the shells, but the shape was not very good. It was not a regular pattern but a little, like a lazy goat's hairstyle. Although pearls of this quality were not considered top quality in the ocean, the 2 females were extremely rare. Gu Mingming drew the pearl left and right on Melinda's body. The size was just right to make an earring. It matched Melinda's face perfectly. She used a tree branch to draw a simple diagram for Melinda. Melinda's eyes almost popped out of her head. Perhaps only Oriton's obsession with food could compare to a girl's obsession with jewelry. The earring was finally completed. This was thanks to Fei Rui's spitting technique. He held the pearl and spat out a droplet of water from his mouth. It was as thin as an embroidery needle and accurately pierced through the spot Gu Mingming had pointed out. Gu Mingming was overjoyed. She asked for a strand of Melinda's hair to pierce through the hole and tie a dead knot. Then she skillfully weaved a flower pattern. Gu Mingming didn't know which generation's inherited memories told her that the hair of the mermaid tribe was very tough and not easily damaged. Moreover, Melinda's hair was long and of good quality. Using her hair to make an earring was the best match for her ears. Everything was prepared. The last step was to pierce Melinda's ears. Why else would it be said that one would not regret dying for beauty? In order to wear the earring, the petite little girl handed over her ear without hesitation and let Fei Rui spit a drop of water through it. Fei Rui was trembling in fear. What kind of joke was this? Even a slight frown from his precious little sister was enough to make his heart ache. Now she wanted him to attack her? No way, no way. Gu Mingming snorted. So useless. Carter, come here. Gu Mingming waved her hand. Carter walked over silently and stood beside Gu Mingming, his eyes fixed on Melinda. Gu Mingming pointed at the center of Melinda's earlobe. Can you pierce a small hole here? Carter frowned and looked at Melinda. You really want to have your ears pierced? Melinda was afraid of Carter and instinctively wanted to hide. But after looking at Gu Mingming and then at the pearl earring, she hesitated but still nodded. This was the first time Melinda had asked him to do something. No matter how reluctant he was, Carter would not disappoint her. Chapter 773. Melinda did not know why. This was the person she was most afraid of, but when she heard him say that, she felt strangely at ease. Blushing, Melinda didn't have time to think about anything else when she felt a warm breath on her ear. Instinctively, she shrank her neck to avoid it, but Carter's hand was already on her face. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the side of her face was pressed against his chest. His heart was beating wildly. He didn't know if it was because he was worried that he had accidentally hurt her, or because she was willing to be so close to him. He only knew that when he saw her blush, his body reacted faster than his brain. He wanted to hug her. He really just wanted to hug her. Melinda did not struggle or resist. She seemed to be in a daze and allowed Carter to hug her for a long time. Fei Rui was unhappy and wanted to separate them, but was held back by Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head lightly. Isn't it good to have another reliable person to protect her with you? Fei Rui was stunned for a moment. He carefully observed Carter's and Melinda's expressions before slowly withdrawing his strength and turning to leave. After hugging for a long time, Carter released Melinda. It was not that he had enough, but he did not dare to ask for more. He wanted to hug her and never let go. But if he hugged her any longer, she would angrily push him away. He was prepared to be scolded by Melinda, but his careful gaze met Melinda's momentary disappointment. Maybe she liked his hug. Stunned for a moment, Carter immediately hugged Melinda back into his arms. He would hug her like this until the end of time. However, Melinda had already regained her senses from that momentary chill. She pushed Carter away and walked to Gu Mingming's side. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. She hid behind Gu Mingming with her head lowered, clearly still resisting Carter. Gu Mingming pretended not to see anything. She pulled Melinda along and chatted happily. She helped Melinda put on the pearl earrings and sighed sincerely. He pulled Melinda to the beach and asked her to look at the reflection in the water to see if she was satisfied with the result. However, Melinda's eyes subconsciously peeked at Carter through the reflection in the water. Gu Mingming pulled Melinda back and pretended to be nonchalant. Carter, what do you think of this earring? Are you a good match for Melinda? Carter's eyes were still on Melinda's face. Meeting her cautious and expectant gaze, Carter smiled bashfully and dotingly. Very beautiful, very beautiful. Gu Mingming clearly saw that Melinda's face had turned red, but she refused to let it go. Then is the earring prettier or Melinda prettier? You have to speak clearly. Kate's expression did not change. Melinda is beautiful. She is the most beautiful female in the world. She is the essence of all things beautiful. Gu Mingming smiled and nodded, then pretended to sigh in pity. What a pity there's only one. If only I could find another pearl that looks exactly the same to make a pair. Carter did not say a word, but Gu Mingming recognized his expression. It was the expression Elvis and Leah had every time she said something unintentionally, and Elvis and Leah secretly remembered it. She believed that even if Carter had to turn the entire ocean upside down, he would definitely find another pearl that was exactly the same for Melinda. However, he would leave the future to time. Chapter 774. After resting for 2 days, Fei Rui and Carter brought their tribesmen to fetch Gu Mingming to the Forbidden Abyss on the morning of the 3rd day. Compared to the first time they entered the sea, it was a little more extravagant this time. Gu Mingming was wrapped up in Wabiai's snake tail, feeling like an emperor leading his officials on a tour with a divine beast. Although this divine beast looked like a piece of sh*t soaked in water, but she endured it. After all, there were many fishes behind them and it looked rather intimidating. Elvis and Leah also wanted to follow but were rejected by Gu Mengmeng. Although the mermaid tribe's air bubble could allow them to breathe underwater, if they met with any accident and the air bubble burst, they would definitely die at that depth. Moreover, even if the air bubble was fine, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea was also a serious problem. Beasts who lived on land for a long time would be half dead just by going down. Why was Gu Mengmeng fine? Nonsense, she had Snake's Beast King powers and the kiss of the beast deity from her lonely father. Of course she would be fine. When they neared the so-called Forbidden Abyss, Gu Mengmeng finally understood why Fei Rui said the messenger of the beast deity had to come personally. It was clearly a flowing sea, but it was filled with a thick layer of poison. It was as if the poison was continuously seeping out from the depths of the sea, so thick that even the sea could not melt it. Fei Rui and the rest swam to this point and could no longer go any nearer. Their expressions were solemn as if they were suffocating. Gu Mengmeng didn't want to force them, so she asked them to retreat. She and Wabiai could go down alone. Fei Rui was worried, but he also knew that with his powers he would only cause more trouble if he went down. So he instructed Gu Mengmeng not to force herself, and to retreat if she felt something was wrong. She must not force herself. Gu Mengmeng made a reassuring gesture and asked them to retreat further and not be affected by the poison. Fei Rui and Carter said that they would meet her at the entrance and wait for her to come out. Gu Mengmeng didn't reject them. She just led Wabiai into the deepest part of the pitch-black darkness without any source of light. Gu Mengmeng had inherited Elvis's night vision, so her fear of the dark had already been reduced to its lowest point. But the absolute darkness and the absolute silence still gave her a creepy feeling of uneasiness. Gu Mengmeng instinctively grasped Wabiai's hand, but Wabiai said irritatingly, "Don't you know how strong your claws are? If you break my arm later, you can do it yourself if you encounter any danger." It had to be said that Wabiai's words effectively dispelled Gu Mengmeng's fear. That's right, in the entire beast world she was already the strongest among the strong. If she met with any danger she could just release her beast pressure and suppress it. If it was some kind of demon or ghost, didn't she have a lonely old man's father to back her up? *CK she had someone on top of her too, okay? He was a legitimate second-generation immortal. Because of Snake's tear of the beast deity, Gu Mengmeng's body was now immune to all poisons, because there was nothing more poisonous than the blood in her body. Fighting poison with poison, it was only natural that the weaker side would be completely devoured. However, Wabiai clearly did not possess such strength. The deeper he went, the denser the poisonous fog became. Wabiai was starting to feel a little powerless. Gu Mengmeng didn't want Wabiai in front of her, so she asked him to return and wait with Fei Rui and the rest. But Wabiai said, "If I leave you alone, you can forget about raising your head in front of him for the rest of your life." Digression. Yeah, today's update is over. Chapter 775. Gu Mengmeng wanted to say that there was no need to compete in such a place. She had the protection of the kiss of the beast deity and her abilities were not affected in the water. Even without Wabiai, it would not be a big problem. But Gu Mengmeng also knew that males had their own pride and dignity. Sometimes they would view certain things as more important than their own lives. She did not hesitate too much because any further hesitation would only cause Wabiai more pain and suffering. Nodding, Gu Mengmeng said, "If you can't hold on, go back immediately. I will not blame you and neither will Snake. On the contrary, if anything happens to you, I will not be able to answer to Snake." Wabiai tucked Gu Mengmeng under his armpit and charged into the abyss in his half-beast form. He raised his speed to the maximum, clearly wanting to end the battle as soon as possible. His tightly furrowed brows and a solemn expression that she had never seen before proved that his current condition was not optimistic. But he still gritted his teeth and said, "I don't need you to answer to him about my life." In the poisonous fog in the deep sea, there was nothing but flowing water. Wabiai's speed was so fast that Gu Mengmeng could only feel the poisonous fog whizzing past her ears. Her body was sinking rapidly. But how long did she sink? How deep and how far did she sink? How long did she sink? Gu Mengmeng could not be bothered. But when Wabiai's body finally stopped, Gu Mengmeng could clearly see that the scales on his tail had already been corroded by the poisonous fog, revealing the flesh underneath. There were also many festering spots on his chest. It was not fatal, but it was still a ghastly sight. Wabiai spat out a mouthful of saliva that was mixed with blood. He raised his hand to wipe it off and laughed as though he did not know his limits. You want to compete in poison with me? In this life only snake is more poisonous than me. Seeing his stubborn look, Gu Mingming retracted her hand that was about to support him. Sometimes she had to know how to hold back her pity to save a man's face. Gu Mingming smiled and patted the parts of Wabiai's body that were still intact. Not bad, I thought you couldn't hold on any longer. TSK, the only one who can kill me in this world has already been destroyed by you. Wabiai said with unclear emotions before surveying the surroundings. The poisonous fog hovered above their heads like a thick, dark cloud, while the area under the poisonous fog was unbelievably clean. Gu Mingming consciously sucked in a mouthful of seawater and swallowed it, only to realize that it was not salty. In other words, the part under the poisonous fog was not seawater but fresh water, and it was the kind of fresh water that was similar to mineral water. This was very strange. Gu Mingming did not know what kind of topography would cause such a situation to occur. Could it be related to the poisonous fog? However, Gu Mingming did not have much interest in surveying the geography of the seabed. She just walked along the path that was paved with mud from the seabed. Speaking of which, it was very strange. There was clearly still water below, but there was no water flowing. It was clearly the same seabed mud, but there was a forest path that formed a sharp contrast with the mud beside it, as if it was guiding her forward. After taking 2 steps, Gu Mingming realized something was wrong. The speed at which her feet sank was getting faster and faster, but it was getting harder and harder to pull out. Underwater swamp? Gu Mingming frowned and wanted to swim across the sky. Chapter 776. Gu Mingming tried to walk around from the side of the small path, but she realized that the suction force from the side was stronger. She had just placed her feet lightly on the ground when there was already a force sucking her in, almost sucking her in. Wabiai used his snake tail to lift Gu Mingming up onto his head. He had already transformed into his original form. The huge snake head was as big as a train and Gu Mingming sat on it stably. The thick snake body slithered along the path like a fish in water. Gu Mingming giggled. Luckily Wabiai had insisted on coming down with her. Otherwise she really didn't know how to get down. Little shit, I didn't expect you to be so reliable. Gu Mingming patted Wabiai's head. Wabiai stuck out his tongue and said to Gu Mingming in snake language, "If you call me little shit again, do you believe I won't throw you into the mud?" Gu Mingming shrugged. "I don't believe you." Wabiai gritted his teeth and didn't reply. Because, he didn't believe it either. Because of Wabiai's cheat-like nature, they reached the end of the path after about half an hour. It was rather boring and nothing happened. Then, Gu Mingming was even more confused. The ocean behind them was like a huge water ball, rippling with water, but the light was blocked off. And the place they were at now was actually dry and filled with air. It was not an underwater cave or any other land. They were at the bottom of the ocean, but the ocean was behind them, as if there was an invisible wall of water blocking off the ocean. Not a single drop of water flowed in. Wabiai had also transformed back into his human form. And the miraculous thing was that his injuries had actually healed. Not only that, Gu Mingming even felt that his skin had become better than before. She had heard that there was a sea mud face mask that was selling well, but she didn't expect the effects to be so good. Gu Mingming secretly decided that she would dig some up when she returned later. It would be good to give it to her friends and family as local specialties, right? Wabiai also noticed the changes on his body, but he didn't take it to heart. He just urged Gu Mingming to hurry on. Not long after, Gu Mingming saw a huge clam shell. Yes, just a dried clam shell. As expected, not all demons and ghosts could live for more than 1,000 years. Gu Mingming went forward and wanted to pry open the clamshell to take a look. But the moment her hand touched the clamshell, it cracked and shattered into pieces. Was it eroded by the wind? Gu Mingming shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She pushed the shredded clamshell to one side and found a pearl the size of a fist. It was black and glowed with a dark green light. It was faint and gave off a mysterious vibe. Gu Mingming waited in her hand and looked around to see if there was anything else. She thought to herself, was this the kiss of the ocean? A black pearl? It was a little big, but no matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about it. The luminous pearl that Elvis had given her to play with previously was not much smaller than this. She had crushed it just like that. It did not seem to be that rare. Gu Mingming held it in her hands for a long time, but still could not think of anything else. If the kiss of the ocean was not referring to the shattered clam shell, then it could only be referring to this pearl. And on the way back, Gu Mingming truly experienced the awesomeness of this pearl. Chapter 777. Gu Mingming was stunned by the scene before her the moment she entered the poisonous fog from the freshwater. The poisonous mist swirled, and like the drain of a bathtub that had been opened, it gradually disappeared from the drain. And this drain was the black pearl in Gu Mingming's hand, the kiss of the ocean. What the heck? Don't judge a pearl by its cover. Gu Mingming stared in bewilderment as the poisonous fog swirled into a huge whirlpool like a tornado. Then, the thinnest part of the fog was rapidly sucked into the black pearl. She didn't know how to react. After a long while, when Gu Mingming regained her senses, the poisonous fog had already thinned to the point where she could vaguely see what was going on 3 to 5 meters away. Amidst the dilution of the seawater, there was a sense of ink-stained beauty. Gu Mingming thought about how Wabiai had to swim for half a day to bring her down. No matter how powerful the pearl was, it would take some time to absorb the fog. It would be too much of a waste of time to swim back after it was done. Not to mention Fei Rue and Carter, Elvis and Leah didn't know what was going on down there. Wouldn't they go crazy seeing her taking so long to return? So Gu Mingming leaned over to Wabiai and said, "Let's swim back as we swim. I don't think we can finish absorbing the fog in such a short time." Wabiai had originally come with Gu Mingming. He wasn't interested in the poisonous fog, nor the kiss of the ocean. So when he heard Gu Mingming's words, he nodded and held Gu Mingming under his arm as he swam back slowly. He even intentionally swam towards the areas with the thickest poisonous fog so that the pearl could absorb the fog faster. Before they could swim out of the poisonous fog, Gu Mingming smelled blood. She instinctively frowned. Could it be that the giant fish tribe and the mermaid tribe had gotten into a fight again? Tieske, why were these fish more aggressive than lions and tigers? Gu Mingming was worried that Fei Rue would be at a disadvantage, so she asked Wabiai to speed up. The closer they got, the more Gu Mingming felt that something was wrong. The sounds of fighting were rather loud. It didn't seem like something Fei Rue and Carter could create. After all, with Fei Rue's small physique, he was nothing in front of Kite. It was a one-sided abuse. It was impossible for him to cause such a ruckus. Furthermore, Carter still wanted to woo Melinda, so he couldn't kill Fei Rue. If he really beat Fei Rue up, then he could forget about developing a relationship with Melinda that was more than friendship in this lifetime. Gu Mingming choked on her saliva as she charged out of the poisonous fog. It was not a problem with the seawater, but the blood content of the seawater was too high. Gu Mingming almost doubted her own eyes. What was going on? Did he swim into the burial pit of the sea race? Why were there so many corpses of the sea race? Although they had been beaten back to their original forms and were just fish, Gu Mingming could clearly tell that they were not ordinary fish, but from the ocean tribe. But after returning to their original forms, Gu Mingming could not recognize any of them. The corpses of the sea folk were different from those of ordinary fish. When ordinary fish died, their corpses would float up, but the corpses of the sea folk would sink. After the poisonous fog thinned, the corpses would slowly sink into the poisonous fog. Their bodies were already wounded and they did not have a strong resistance to poison. As a result, even after 80% of the poisonous fog had been absorbed, their corpses continued to rot in the poisonous fog until not even their bones were left. Chapter 778. Wabiai led Gu Mingming and continued to swim upstream. They could already see people fighting. Huge waves surged beneath the surface of the sea. The battle between the sea tribes was even more brutal than that between the wild beasts on land. Gu Mingming tried her best to distinguish between friend and foe, and finally found Fei Rue and Carter under the guidance of that head of golden hair. At that moment, the two of them were being attacked by another member of the sea tribe. From the looks of it, that person should also be third level. It was hard to say who would win if he fought Carter head-on, but Carter had to deal with him while protecting Melinda at the same time. It was inevitable that he was being attacked from both sides. Gu Mingming quickly swam over and turned to protect Fei Rue and his sister behind her. She faced the enemy's attack head-on and smiled coldly. She didn't even raise her hand. The attacker didn't hesitate at all because of Gu Mingming's appearance. Not only did his movements not slow down, they even became fiercer. In just an instant he adjusted his angles slightly, he was going to take Gu Mingming's life. However, before that sword-like nose could reach within 3 steps of Gu Mingming, it stopped abruptly. The attacker frowned and suddenly turned back to look. His heart skipped a beat and his face contorted in shock. Fear contorted his face and he didn't even have time to shout for help before half of his body was bitten off by Wabiai. Blood spread across the sea like a red spider lily blooming in the sea. It was demonic and strange, carrying with it a strong aura of death. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Wabiai threw away the half-fish wrapped in his snake tail in disgust. Then he watched in disgust as it slowly sank into the poisonous fog of the abyss, gradually rotting and dissipating. Twisting his neck, he scanned the surroundings. That gaze was just like looking at food. Great messenger. Fei Rui grasped Melinda's hand and pushed her to Gu Mingming's side. Great messenger, please help me take care of my sister. If we all die here today, please bring her back to Saint Nazir. Even if she becomes partners with a land beast, it's fine as long as she survives. As he said that, Fei Rui glanced at Carter. Carter pursed his lips but didn't say a word. The other party had come prepared. They had concentrated their attacks on Melinda from the start, forcing him to stay by her side to protect her. He could only watch helplessly as his people were scattered by the other party and killed one by one. Now that the giant fish tribe had suffered heavy losses, it was doubtful if they could even survive to the end, much less protect Melinda. He wanted to have her, but compared to his own wish, her survival was more important. She was so beautiful and kind that no matter how vulgar the land orcs were, they would still take pity on her. If it was the tribe of the messenger of the beast deity, she would have a good life. Clenching his fists tightly, Carter slowly took a step forward, ready to fight. It was the sorrow and heroism of a warrior who would never return. But just as he took a step forward, his waist tightened. Melinda hugged Kate's waist from behind and said in a nasal voice, "I'm not leaving. I want to be with Kate. Even if we die together." Chapter 779. Carter and Melinda had no idea what Gu Mingming was saying. They only saw her gently nudge the three of them away from the battlefield before instructing, "All members of the giant fish tribe and mermaid tribe, retreat behind your tribe leaders." As soon as he finished speaking, the scattered clansmen retreated in a sorry state. The enemies were intimidated by Wabiai and didn't dare to move. They could only watch helplessly as they left. "Is there no one else on our side?" Gu Mingming turned back and asked. Carter scanned the surroundings and nodded. Gu Mingming smiled slyly. "Children, it's time to eat." As soon as he finished speaking, countless water snakes surged out from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. Then they gradually tightened the encirclement and gathered the enemies again and again. Those who attempted to break out of the encirclement or escape would immediately be bitten by the agile water snakes for a second. In less than 3 seconds they would no longer have the strength to struggle. Then the water snakes would bite their heads and slowly swallow their entire bodies into their stomachs. The others didn't dare to escape anymore. They cowered and moved closer to the center. And in the center, waiting for them was the beast form Wabiai. His bloody mouth was wide open as if waiting for them to jump into his mouth. Retreat. There was no way out. There was a huge disparity in power. It was supposed to be a sure-win situation, but the moment that female appeared, the tables were turned. Damn it, when did these snakes appear? All the enemies were surrounded by the snakes like sardines in a can. With Wabiai's mouth he would probably finish them all in 2 mouthfuls. Wait a minute. Gu Mingming chuckled and gestured for him to stop. The snake beast's encirclement stopped shrinking and Wabiai also transformed back into his half-beast form out of boredom. He used his tail to sweep up the person who had just spoken and threw him in front of Gu Mingming. Fish in the water would never be in such a sorry state. Although he was thrown out, he still landed steadily in front of Gu Mingming. He straightened his body and looked rather arrogant. "Greetings, great messenger." Gu Mingming sized it up and chuckled. "Oh, so there are stray beasts in the sea too." That person stood up straight. It was not strange that his identity as a stray beast had been exposed. After all, although his side had the numbers of a tribe, they were not united. On land, tribes lived together, but in the ocean most tribes were united. Furthermore, the females in the tribe would not mate with outsiders to ensure the purity of the tribe's bloodline. This was also one of the reasons why Melinda was so resistant and evasive when Kate expressed her desire to woo her, even though she had saved Kate. Although the stray beasts are beastmen abandoned by the beast deity, the beast deity should not have sent the great messenger to kill us all, right? I wonder why the great emissary wants to interfere in our dispute today? That person was rather strong-willed. He didn't think that it was wrong for him to initiate a massacre. After all, this world was ruled by the strong and it was the right thing to do. Gu Mingming smiled at the person in front of her. "Of course the beast deity did not order me to kill you all. Otherwise, do you think you still have the chance to talk nonsense with me?" Gu Mingming slowly and appropriately released a bit of pressure. It was very subtle and not a lot, but it was enough to make people shiver. The pressure of a beast king. That person gritted his teeth and lowered his head in submission. The reason was simply because he was submissive to the strong and had a deep-rooted fear of a superior. Aside from the topic, explain why there were clearly water snakes around but no one came out to rescue them just now. These water snakes were brought out by Wabiai. Since Wabiai did not say anything, Gu Mingming did not intend for them to appear from the start. After all, the Sea tribe seemed to be very afraid of snakes. She did not want to create panic. Gu Mingming did not expect someone to attack her the moment she went down to retrieve a pearl, so she did not give the order to protect them. And snakes were cold-blooded by nature. To them, the life and death of others was just a trivial matter. They would not care. Chapter 780. There was still a bunch of weaklings behind her. After the previous battle with the stray beasts, Gu Mingming already knew the importance of controlling her emotions. She had been working hard to control her beast pressure over this period of time, and had achieved some success. Seeing that the person who came out to negotiate had given in, there was no need for her to continue pressuring him. After all, what if Melinda was scared to death before the stray beasts? As for why I want to interfere in your dispute, you have to ask yourself. Gu Mingming smiled condescendingly. Don't tell me that you stray beasts who have been banished by the various tribes just happened to meet them and wanted to exterminate them when you passed by. Why not? Stray beasts do not follow the rules. That person was a little guilty but still forced himself to look calm. Gu Mingming replied with an "oh." So stray beasts do not follow the rules. All right then, let's leave the stray beasts to them to settle. Gu Mingming took a step forward and slapped that person's shoulder, sending him back into the water snake's encirclement. Gu Mingming's strength was so strong that even a fish could not resist the force. When he could barely steady himself, he felt a pain in his lower body before he could say another word. Turning his head, he realized that his lower body had already entered Wabiai's mouth. The snake's venomous eyes were vertical, emitting a chill that made one's entire body shiver. But he did not even have the chance to beg for mercy before he was swallowed into Wabiai's mouth and died. If it was in the past, Gu Mingming would definitely be a little afraid when faced with such a scene. But after inheriting Snake's memories, she was very clear on one thing. That was to be merciful to one's enemy was to be cruel to oneself. She had already heard the water snake's report. These stray beasts had planned to kill Carter, Fei Rui and the rest, then disguise themselves as them. When Gu Mingming emerged from the abyss, they would suddenly attack and snatch the kiss of the ocean. But they didn't expect a few things. Firstly, the poisonous fog didn't kill Wabiai, nor did it weaken Gu Mingming. Secondly, they underestimated Fei Rui, Carter and the rest. They didn't expect that they would rather risk their lives to stay here and provide support for Gu Mingming. They were clearly not powerful but none of them tried to escape. If Gu Mingming came back later, looking at the less than 20 people left behind, Gu Mingming's heart was bleeding. How majestic was the scene when they arrived. In less than half a day there were less than 20 people left. Gu Mingming hugged Fei Rui's arm and grinned. Our little shit looks ferocious when he eats. Don't scare Melinda. Let's return to the shore first. Fei Rui and Carter turned back to look at Wabiai. The absolute disparity in strength was on full display in front of him. The stray beasts that had been tearing at their tribesmen earlier were now coiled around Wabiai by the water snake. It was as if they had been sent to the dragon's pool and had lost all will to resist. There was only a desolate look on their faces, clearly waiting for death. Such a scene was not suitable for females to watch. Chapter 781. The moment she broke through the water, the ripples on the surface of the sea shattered the afterglow of the setting sun. The orange-red light shone on her body, making her look like a warrior returning from a blood-soaked battle, exuding an inexplicable sense of heroism. Elvis rushed to the shore and pulled Gu Mingming over from Fei Rui's hands. He used his chest to warm her up and scanned her body with his X-ray eyes. He only heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was unharmed from head to toe. Leah wrapped Gu Mingming up in a beast's skin that was already warmed up. He looked up and did a head count. He frowned slightly but didn't ask anything. When they had left, there had been a huge crowd. But when they returned, there were only 2 or 3 of them left. Fei Rui and Carter were still bleeding, while Melinda looked haggard and there were over 20 people behind them. It was easy to guess what had happened without asking. Leah and Elvis were well aware of how much Gu Mingming valued human lives. They didn't want her to shoulder all these lives on her own. They observed Gu Mingming carefully. Seeing that she wasn't too affected, they felt a little more at ease. But what they didn't know was that Gu Mingming could already control her emotions well. It wasn't that she was numb to death, but because she knew that the dead were gone. She had to look forward, she had to be brave. Only then would the people around her not be affected by her depression. Think about how her emotions had tormented Elvis and Leah the last time? She had to love her own men. She couldn't possibly keep crying and worrying Elvis and Leah every time something happened, could she? Gu Mingming spread out the black pearl in her hands for Elvis and Leah to see, saying, "This thing is quite rare. I want to go down again tomorrow to suck up all the poisonous fog that has not been sucked dry, in case it pollutes the water source." What poisonous fog? Elvis's heart twitched as he asked coldly. Gu Mingming explained the situation at the bottom of the sea, including how she went down, how she obtained the kiss of the ocean, what she had encountered on the way back, and what Wabi was doing when he didn't follow up. Elvis and Leah were trembling with fear. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to strangle this troublemaker. Why did she run to wherever there was danger? The poisonous fog was so thick that even Wabi could not withstand it, and she dared to rush in without blinking? With her delicate skin, could she be more resistant to corrosion than Wabi's snake scales? No matter how Gu Mingming explained that she was fine, Elvis and Leah were sure that she had been corroded by the poisonous fog to the extent that a layer of her skin had been peeled off. Well, no matter what, I've gotten the kiss of the ocean back. But Gu Mingming's gaze landed on Carter's and Fei Rue's faces, then back at Melinda, who was still in a state of shock. The Mermaid Clan and Giant Fish Clan suffered great losses in order to receive me. I cannot just leave like this. Leah said while wiping her hair. I don't care about other things, but don't mention anything about going into the sea again. Gu Mingming turned her head and protested, I still want to take in the fog, how can I not go into the sea? Leah did not back down. Let Wabi absorb the poisonous fog with this stupid pearl. You stay on the shore obediently. Gu Mingming said, I won't. Leah chuckled, his gaze gentle and affectionate. He whispered into Gu Mingming's ear, you have to believe. Elvis and I have 100 ways to make you lose the energy to go into the sea again. Do you want to try? Chapter 782. What kind of joke was that? Try. She was not stupid. Just Elvis alone could easily make her unable to get out of bed for 3 days. Now with Leah, if these two shameless fellows really went all out to teach her a lesson, she would really be dismembered on the bed. Seeing Gu Mingming admit defeat, Leah smiled regretfully. He hooked Gu Mingming's little chin and said in a slightly resentful tone, I still wanted to try forcing Polly. What a pity. Gu Mingming blushed and pushed Leah away. She then looked at Fei Rue and Carter and said, there are only so many of you left. It is not practical to split into 2 tribes. Why don't we merge? Fei Rue doted on his younger sister. He could see that Melinda's feelings towards Carter had changed and he could not bear to disappoint his sister. And Carter was even more so. He could give up his life for Melinda. What else did he have to protect? But there had never been a mixed tribe in the ocean. Although there were only over 20 mermaids and giant fish tribes left, they did not know whether to call themselves the mermaids tribe or the giant fish tribe. Melinda was also in a difficult position. She obviously hoped that her brother and Carter could become a family. She did not want to leave either of them. But it was a heavy topic to decide on which tribe to make disappear. No matter what she chose, one side would be hurt. This was not something she wanted to see. So Melinda took a step forward and looked at Gu Mingming. She said timidly, the great messenger saved all of our lives today. She is our benefactor. We are willing to listen to the great messenger and merge the 2 tribes together. But as for the name, could we trouble the great messenger to help us decide on it? Gu Mingming looked at Melinda and felt a sense of pity for her. She was really different from those coquettish bitches outside. Even if girls saw her, they wouldn't think that her delicateness was fake. Instead, they would really want to hold her in the palm of their hands and protect her. It was the kind of feeling that any girl in front of her would want to become a strong woman and not let others bully her. Gu Mingming thought that if she could give birth to a daughter one day, she would definitely send her to Melinda to be her godmother and let her raise her. She would also raise a well-bred socialite like Melinda. Melinda was practically the epitome of what all mothers in the world called other people's daughters. It was 2F** king rare. Gu Mingming could not resist Melinda's request. Zhang Xian nodded and pondered for a long time. However, when it came to naming things, the more cautious one was, the less one would be able to come up with an idea. Gu Mingming thought for a while and asked Leah, what would God's blessing be translated into the beast world's language? Leah replied, bridges. Gu Mingming felt that it sounded rather nice, so she turned to look at Carter and Fei Rue. What do the 2 of you think? This name was too big. To be honest, not to mention the fact that there were only 20 people in this tribe, even if there were 2,000 people, no one would dare to call out such an arrogant name. God's blessing? You don't like it? Gu Mingming looked at the strange expressions on Fei Rui and Carter's faces. It did not look like they did not like it or like it. Instead, they looked a little scared. Chapter 783. Why should I be angry? Gu Mingming was at a loss. Fei Rui lowered his head. You clearly didn't receive the beast deity's blessings, yet you use such a name. This is disrespectful to him. Gu Mingming chuckled. Who said you didn't receive the beast deity's blessings? Fei Rui looked up at Gu Mingming in a daze. His sparkling eyes shone with a glimmer of hope. Gu Mingming pulled Melinda over and planted a light kiss on her forehead. It was just like how the beast deity had kissed her forehead in the dream realm. Gu Mingming said with a sense of blessing, You all risked your lives to protect the beast deity's daughter. How could he not bless you all? Melinda blushed all the way to her neck from Gu Mingming's kiss. It had nothing to do with love or hate. It was just a kind of excitement. It was as if you were suddenly invited to a meeting by the premier of a country. Not only did the premier not put on airs or keep a distance, he even shook hands with you and said, Child, you did very well in your exams. I am praising you on behalf of the country. If it were you, you would also blush. Gu Mingming looked at Fei Rui and Carter. She smiled. What do the two of you think? If you don't like this name, you can give me a name you like. I have no objections. After all, this is your own tribe. You have the right to name yourselves. Fei Rui and Carter exchanged glances. Then they bowed to Gu Mingming. Bridges will forever follow the great messenger. I will be your most reliable servant in the ocean. Actually, Gu Mingming didn't intend to recruit servants. Although she liked a senior from the swimming club, she wasn't that passionate about swimming. Now that she had taken the kiss of the ocean, she probably wouldn't return to the beach for no reason. But after she left, it would be difficult for this small tribe of over 20 people to survive in the ocean. If her name could bring them some protection, then so be it. Nodding her head, Gu Mingming finally accepted the loyalty of the Bridges tribe to her. Fei Rui was originally the prince of the tribe. He should be the next tribe leader. Carter was the first to speak. He gently held Melinda's little hand, his determined eyes filled with tenderness. He had given all his tenderness to Melinda and had nothing left for the world. I just want to stay by Melinda's side. I don't care about anything else. Fei Rui shook his head and said, The strength of the patriarch directly determines the strength of a tribe. I know that I'm unable to support the prosperity of a tribe like Bridges. You should be the patriarch. Although I don't like you, I can't deny your strength and talent. Furthermore, my sister is a princess after all. How can her first partner be a mediocre person? Carter still wanted to say something, but Fei Rui suddenly laughed. Without giving him a chance to speak, Fei Rui continued, Also, after you have mated, I want to return to Saint Nazir with the great messenger. When he said this, everyone present was shocked. Elvis scooped Gu Mingming back into his arms. His powerful aura engulfed everyone, making them want to kneel on the ground. His face darkened and he looked like he was about to tear Fei Rui apart. What do you want? Fei Rui was trembling in fear. His clear eyes were filled with grievance. He looked like he was about to cry. I want to learn the great messenger's new skills, and bring those magical skills back to the ocean. Aside from the topic, today's update has ended. Chapter 784. Gu Mingming smacked Elvis. He's still a child, why are you scaring him? Look at how scared he is, he's about to cry. Elvis was rather satisfied with Fei Rui's answer, so when Gu Mingming said that, Elvis did not say anything else. He just retracted his pressure and said calmly, as long as he doesn't have any improper thoughts, he won't meet with any undeserved misfortune. Fei Rui's eyes were filled with disbelief. This farce ended just like that. But Gu Mingming still didn't know how powerful the Bridges tribe would become in the near future. After all, she had neglected the number of fish that could be born in a single birth. Gu Mingming didn't attend Melinda and Carter's wedding. After all, there weren't any unnecessary formalities here. It was a simple and crude wedding where they directly consummated their marriage. Although Gu Mingming had already given birth to 4 children, she still held a conservative attitude when it came to observing other people's mating process. Eavesdropping was too exciting. She didn't want it. So Gu Mingming bade farewell to everyone at the seaside. Fei Rue stayed behind to wait for Carter and Melinda to mate before returning to St. Nazaire, while Gu Mingming and the rest returned the way they came. Gu Mingming originally wanted Wabiai to return to the Snake King Valley directly, but Wabiai had a lazy expression and didn't respond. Gu Mingming knew that he was still worried about her. He was afraid that if anything happened to her, he wouldn't be able to answer to Snake. But even though she was already so powerful that she didn't need to fear anyone, Wabiai still treated her like a parent. Gu Mingming felt helpless, but she didn't dislike it either. Sometimes she even had the illusion that Wabiai was like her biological brother. He was impudent, but he would still stand in front of her when she was in danger. No matter how powerful she was, he still didn't think she could face any difficulties or dangers. This feeling was pretty good. After all, in the beast world, males only treated females with the intention of mating. But Wabiai was an exception. As for flaws, this brother of hers was a full 800 years older than her. TSK, the age difference was a little too big. The journey back was not as smooth as when they had come. Every so often, Gu Mingming could sense that someone was observing them from the shadows. However, it was obvious that they were afraid of Wabiai and Elvis's aura and didn't dare to reveal themselves. Gu Mingming chuckled. This must be, after the kiss of the ocean? How convenient. Wabiai said lazily, this is the first time I've seen food following me. I don't even have to go far to hunt. Gu Mingming rolled her eyes. Can you not be so hardcore? Before they make a move, we can't make the first move. Wabiai clicked his tongue impatiently, expressing his disdain. Gu Mingming did not back down and snorted back. It was night and all was quiet. A few black figures tiptoed in the night sky and slowly approached the sleeping Gu Mingming. He was secretly delighted in his heart. Although he was powerful, he was a little too arrogant and conceited. He actually slept so soundly. Wasn't he a little too careless? One hand slowly reached towards Gu Mingming, wanting to take away the kiss of the ocean from her. However, before his hand could even touch her clothes, he felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw that the back of his hand had already started to rot. Chapter 785. Tisk. After a soft sound, the black figure with a broken hand was thrown away. Leah swayed his large tail and said with a disappointed expression, "Do you have any professional ethics? Can you make such a loud noise when stealing? I can't even pretend not to see it. So unprofessional, you let me down." The few people who came along looked at each other. What did he mean? Gu Mingming sat up from Elvis's arms. Elvis's blue eyes were filled with love as he looked at her. He rubbed her little head and said, "In the end, I still disturbed your sleep, right?" Gu Mingming sighed and said, "I knew they were following me, I couldn't sleep well." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face lightly and said, "It's all right, I'll settle it soon." With that, Elvis stood up and walked step by step towards the few thieves who disturbed Gu Mingming's sleep. Even stray beasts have rules. Elvis stretched his neck to the left and right as a warm-up. In a flash, he grabbed the rat beast that was trying to escape and threw it into the sky. A huge eagle owl flew past at a low altitude, and its two claws that were like metal pincers dug into the rat beast's flesh, directly throwing it into the sky. A cry of agony could be heard from 300 meters away, followed by scattered pieces of flesh falling from the sky. A gust of wind blew past and the eagle owl circled in the sky before landing steadily on the ground. He already looked like a sickly young man, his face as white as the moonlight and without a trace of life. His gaze was cold and not sharp, but it was as if he was strangling the throat of the person being stared at, causing fear to rise in one's heart. And all this happened in just 3 to 5 seconds. Taking another step forward, Elvis was like Satan in the dark night, emitting a dangerous aura around him. He was like the king of hell that could not be disobeyed. His words rang in the night sky, like a divine decree from Azura, sending chills down one's spine and making one submit. You can take it by force, but you can't steal it. And you guys have broken this rule. One of the stray beasts was so intimidated by this aura that his legs turned to jelly. He retreated and wanted to escape, but suddenly he seemed to have kicked something and a shiver shot up from the bottom of his feet. He did not even have the courage to look back. The snake's cold tongue licked his neck, and a lazy and slow voice rang in his ears, carrying with it an indescribable malice and ridicule. "Supper? It doesn't look very delicious." Before he could even scream out in pain, his lower body had already been tightly wrapped by the thick snake tail, while his upper body was already in the snake's mouth. The remaining 3 ambushers exchanged glances and quickly locked onto their target, Leah. Although Ian and Leah were 3rd-level orcs, they did not have much of an advantage against land beasts that could fly. Meanwhile, the fox, who looked like a show-off, was obviously the easiest person to defeat in this team. With a sudden movement, the three ambushers charged towards Leah with all their might. But Leah chuckled and pointed at his own nose nonchalantly. "I'm being belittled." With a turn, Leah easily dodged the first claw that attacked him. His furry large tail swept across that person's face playfully, with a strong sense of provocation. Chapter 786. The second stray beast that attacked Leah was grabbed by the wrist by Leah. With a snap, his arm was dislocated. It was not forcefully broken, but from the joints. The flesh was still connected, but the bones were broken. That arm was like a pendulum that had lost its power, hanging down casually. TSK, stretching out your claws in front of the witch doctor. Looks like you really don't want your claws anymore. Leah nimbly ducked under the other arm of the second stray beast and hid behind his back. At this moment, the third stray beast's claws had already pierced through the chest of the second stray beast and was heading straight for Lee's throat. Luckily, Leah was not sticking close to the second stray beast's back. Instead, he was 1.5 steps away, so the third stray beast's blood-stained hand missed. He retracted it and threw the second stray beast's corpse onto the ground without any guilt. Leah patted his own chest. "Aya, you scared me to death. I almost got touched by you. TSK so annoying. Our Ming Ming doesn't like others touching me." There was only one of the three stray beasts left, and it was the only 4th-level orc among the three. Given Lee's current abilities, it was very dangerous to go against him. In order not to be attacked from both sides, Leah had decided to get rid of the 2 3rd-level beasts first. But even if it was a one-on-one battle, it was still very difficult to retaliate with the difference in levels. Apart from Gu Mingming, he did not care about anyone else's life or death. Ian wanted to step forward to help Leah but was held down by his shoulder by Elvis. Ian looked at Elvis in confusion, but Elvis turned to look at Gu Mingming. With Gu Mingming's current abilities, helping Leah was just a matter of beckoning her finger. But she did not move at all. She just clenched her fists tightly and stared at Lee's battle. She did not even have the intention of asking Elvis to help Leah. Then, Elvis's gaze was gentle. The corners of his lips curled up into a beautiful curve. Leah had been seen through. The stray beast's fangs pressed towards Lee's spine. If he bit down, Leah would be crippled even if he did not die. "Leah, I won't allow you to get hurt." Gu Mingming sat on the spot. Her voice seemed like a slight ripple, but it could not conceal the waves hidden within. Her voice was trembling. She was afraid. This knowledge made Leah hesitate. Should he continue pretending? If the way he did it for her good made her worry, then, would he still persist? No, you can't. Because he had already hurt her once for her own good? He absolutely could not let it happen a second time. With a sweep of its fluffy tail, it sent the stray beast flying. The tip of his foot touched the ground lightly, but his entire body bounced up as if he had stepped on a spring. In an instant, he landed behind the stray beast that had been sent flying and kicked his lumbar vertebrae. The huge impact in Lee's kick caused the stray beast's spine to crack. He flew out in a strange manner, just like a broken doll that did not receive the slightest bit of pity. Then a layer of moonlight enveloped Lee's body, making him look like an elf in the dark night. The bloodstains on his body were not hideous, instead they looked like poppies blooming on the other shore, exuding a fatal temptation. Chapter 787. Gu Mingming cupped Lee's face and gave him a deep kiss. It was a lingering kiss. "Leah, congratulations on leveling up." Leah didn't reply and just hugged Gu Mingming in his arms. This little one was too shrewd now. It was getting harder and harder to deceive her. But this difficulty made him feel an unprecedented sense of bliss. She was paying attention to him like this. She didn't say anything, but she knew everything. After half the night, coupled with the blood and corpses all over the ground, it looked like a slaughterhouse. There was no way she could sleep in this place. Elvis carried Gu Mingming in his arms and used a beast's skin to cover her head to let her catch up on her sleep. Meanwhile, the few males continued their journey towards St. Nazaire. It was normal for males to not sleep for a few days and nights. They had to stop and rest every night just to take care of Gu Mingming's routine. Although Gu Mingming didn't need to do anything in the middle of the night, she was still very nervous. Now that she was at ease, her deep sleepiness couldn't be dispelled no matter what. She slept all the way until noon when she was woken up by hunger. When the sun was at its hottest, it was the most torturous for Wabi. He lay lazily on the tree, his head drooping, not wanting to talk to anyone. He did not sleep, nor did he move. He just sat there like a rubber snake. Although Ian could fly, his strength was at its peak at night. During the day, he looked even more lethargic and listless, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He was a male, but he looked as if he was suffering from anemia due to menstruation for 30 days a month. She didn't know what was going on. Seeing how weak he looked like a little sister in the forest, Gu Mingming felt that not feeding him was torture, not to mention letting him hunt. So, Elvis handed Gu Mingming over to Leah and went out to hunt. Gu Mingming sat in Lee's arms and stroked his large tail. She exclaimed in surprise, "Hey, your tail seems to have become thicker after you leveled up." Seeing that Gu Mingming liked his transformation, Leah couldn't help but smile. He said, "The appearance of the Snow Fox tribe will change according to their level." Gu Mingming turned around and looked at Lee's face carefully. Leah was good-looking to begin with. Coupled with his otherworldly aura, he looked like a demon or a deity. Perhaps after looking at him for a long time, Gu Mingming had become immune to it, so she had not carefully scrutinized Lee's facial features for a long time. Gu Mingming then looked at his eyes seriously after he mentioned it. Her eyebrows looked a little thicker than before. She looked a little less charming and more heroic. His tall nose seemed to have narrowed a little, becoming a more standard Western tiger's nose instead of the Oriental lion's nose. The tip of his nose was firm, making his facial features more three-dimensional and deep. A pair of long and affectionate eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, pouring a pool of deep love onto Gu Mingming's face, as if she was the only person in the entire world who could see him. His thin lips did not have a single wrinkle and looked as perfect as a work of art carved by God. His slightly open mouth was like an invitation, making Gu Mingming feel an urge to immediately offer her lips to him. Lee's face was even more perfect than before, so perfect that every angle was like a masterpiece. Chapter 788. It's broad daylight, what nonsense are you spouting? Gu Mingming blushed and lowered her head. However, Leah replied with a meaningful, "Oh." His lips moved closer to Gu Mingming's ear, his warm and ambiguous breath sprayed onto Gu Mingming's earlobe. With a hoarse voice, he said in an ambiguous tone, "So, this is an invitation? You can pamper me at night, right?" She did not know if it was a psychological effect, but Lee's hormones seemed to have increased after he leveled up. She should have been used to being teased, but after being teased for half a year, she could no longer resist Lee's advances. Lee's fingers slid across Gu Mingming's arm from her shoulder to her wrist. His fingertips seemed to carry an electric current, causing Gu Mingming's body to go numb. The only place she could hide was to lean deeper into his arms. Leah was satisfied with Gu Mingming's little action, but his hand landed on the kiss of the ocean in her hands. He tapped it twice nonchalantly and said, "The kiss of the ocean can absorb the poison left behind by Elvis in your body. If you eat it, our mating problem will be solved." Gu Mingming looked at the fist-sized black pearl in her hands and twitched her lips. "Are you sure you won't choke me to death?" Leah lightly knocked Gu Mingming's head. "Silly girl, who asked you to eat it whole? I can crush it and then you can eat it." Gu Mingming had thought Leah was just joking around with his suggestion. Seeing that he was really prepared to crush it, Gu Mingming panicked. She pulled the kiss of the ocean back into her arms and frowned. "No, this is Qishuan's ransom. You cannot touch it." Leah sighed and did not touch the kiss of the ocean again. He just hugged Gu Mingming and said, "What should I do? I'm jealous. MMM?" The top of Gu Mingming's head was pressed against Lee's chin. She could not lift her head to look at his expression and could only respond with a single word. Leah said, "Elvis is your first partner and is more important to you than me. I admit that. But now, even the little wolf pups are more important than me. Mingming, my heart hurts." Gu Mingming smiled helplessly. "You are all my family and equally important to me. But Qishan is in a more dangerous situation now, so I have no choice but to prioritize him." "I know." Leah said, "I also promised not to make things difficult for you. I understand the logic, but I still feel very disappointed. I was too greedy, wasn't I? I want to be the most important person to you." Gu Mingming hugged Leah and leaned her face against his chest, saying softly, "I'm sorry." Lee's heart skipped a beat. He pursed his lips and chuckled. "You know very well that I prefer your confession to an apology." Without any hesitation, Gu Mingming said softly, "I love you." Leah then smiled contentedly and did not say anything else. He had committed a taboo. He should not have fought for the most important, in front of Gu Mingming. Back then, when Gu Mingming wanted to give him the only one, he was the one who forcefully pushed her into Elvis's arms. Later Mingming asked him to give up. It was he himself who said that even if he could only be a beast pet, it would be fine as long as he could stay by her side. But now he was already her legitimate partner, and he could confidently hold her in his arms. However, people were always greedy. Chapter 789. Actually, you could have leveled up a long time ago, right? Gu Mingming pressed her little face against Li's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Although it was a question, it sounded like a statement when it came out of his mouth. Leah chuckled and did not deny it. Gu Mingming continued, I thought about it many times after that. Previously, when we were attacked by stray beasts, although you were caught in a pincer attack, the other party was also a third-level orc. With your third-level energy reserves, as long as you broke through the boundary, you could use the level system to turn the situation around. But you seem to rather be injured than leveling up. I always felt that it was strange until last night, when those 3 stray beasts attacked you together without any discussion. Only then did I understand what you were thinking. Li's face carried an indulgent smile throughout. He had always disliked others guessing his thoughts, especially when his thoughts were seen through. He would be very resistant and immediately force himself to hide his emotions even deeper. But when he was seen through by Gu Mingming, he felt a faint sense of excitement and anticipation. It was as if his carefully wrapped present was opened by his beloved, and with just one look, the other party knew how much effort he had put into choosing the present and how meticulously he had wrapped it. The feeling of his efforts being seen and cherished was really good. It was so good that the blood in his entire body warmed up, nourishing every cell in his body. Tell me about it. Leah coaxed Gu Mingming to say more of her thoughts. He liked to hear her describe her thinking process, because he could not enter her brain to see clearly how she looked when her mind was filled with himself. So, he treasured every word she explained to him, and even more so, he treasured the lively expression on her face when she talked about topics related to him. Gu Mingming did not know how Leah was feeling when he looked at her. His gaze towards her was always affectionate and she seemed to have gotten used to it. But thinking about the reason why Leah was unwilling to level up, Gu Mingming could not help feeling a little heartache. She sighed softly and said, You didn't level up because you wanted to focus all the danger on yourself when we encountered a situation like yesterday, using yourself as bait to ensure my safety. His heart trembled. His Gu Mingming was so sensitive, he felt warm and proud, but also a little uneasy. As sensitive as she was, she couldn't accept his kindness with a clear conscience. Gu Mingming looked up and met Li's eyes. She said seriously, You clearly know that I am already strong enough now, you don't need to do this anymore. Silly girl. Leah rubbed Gu Mingming's head. The sunlight passed through the leaves and landed on his face, bringing much warmth to his smile. He pulled Gu Mingming's little hand to his lips and kissed it before continuing, No matter how strong you are, you will always be my weakness. If you are even the slightest injury, it would be my heart. Chapter 790. Didn't he know that her heart would ache? No, Leah had always known that. He even hoped that Gu Mingming would never see through his thoughts, but at the same time, he was waiting for her to say, Her heart will ache. Gu Mingming looked up into Li's eyes and said seriously and cautiously, When Snake died, I almost couldn't recover from the setback. If not for you and Elvis staying by my side, I might never have been able to walk out of it. Do you want me to experience that kind of collapse again? If you were the one who died, I would break down. Leah hugged Gu Mingming tightly in his arms and kissed her left ear, saying intimately, I was wrong, I shouldn't have made you worry. Don't be angry, don't be sad. Forgive me, all right? Gu Mingming's chin rested on Li's shoulder and she tilted her head, saying softly, Hurry up and become stronger. Didn't you say that you will accompany me to bully others and become tyrants? Leah chuckled, holding Gu Mingming's little face and kissing her lips. Under the sunlight, his smile was exceptionally radiant and beautiful, saying, All right, as long as Gu Mingming says it, I will do it. I will quickly become stronger, then accompany you to bully others and rape others. Gu Mingming basked in the sun, feeling much more relaxed now that she had spoken her mind. Leah would always do what he promised her. He said that he would become stronger, and that he would no longer use himself as bait. This made Gu Mingming feel much more at ease. After waiting for a long time, Gu Mingming turned to look into the distance and said worriedly, Why isn't Elvis back yet? Leah also felt that with Elvis's abilities, the time taken for this hunt was a little too long. Not wanting Gu Mingming to worry, he said casually, "After all, this is not our territory, it might be more troublesome to find satisfying prey. You also know, other than meat, he also wants to be picky about the skin." Gu Mingming nodded. Yes. After the rainy season ended, it was going to be winter. At this time, Elvis really had to start preparing the beast's skin for their family to use during the winter. And ever since Gu Mingming appeared, Elvis's requirements for the beast's skin became stricter and stricter. Sometimes, Gu Mingming even suspected that Elvis was a Virgo. Thinking about this, she did not say anything more and continued to nestle in Lee's arms, stroking the two. The upgraded version of Big Tail was waiting for Elvis to return. Without a watch, Gu Mingming could only estimate the time. About 1.5 to 2 hours later, Elvis returned with the processed prey. "However, you're hurt?" Gu Mingming immediately jumped out of Lee's arms and looked at the palm-sized wound on Elvis's shoulder. Her heart ached. "What happened? Are you in danger?" Elvis looked at his wound and laughed softly. He rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and carried her up while passing the prey to Leah to cook. "No, I was bitten by accident when I was hunting. I have a strong recovery ability. I'll be fine tomorrow or the day after." Gu Mingming frowned and looked at Elvis. "You promised not to lie to me. A 5th-grade orc had been bitten by its prey during a hunt? Why don't you say that a wolf jumped into a rabbit's nest and was eaten by the rabbit?" Chapter 791. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and took a deep breath. She stared into Elvis's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Elvis felt guilty from her stare. Gu Mingming was too observant now and it was too difficult to hide anything from her. "Xiaoming?" Elvis opened his mouth, wanting to beg for mercy. But Gu Mingming didn't give him a chance. She raised her head and shouted, "Lia Ian Wabi, follow me." Gu Mingming pushed Elvis and jumped down from his arms. The 3 people who were called out did not say a word and just stood a step behind Gu Mingming. "Xiaoming." Elvis wanted to say something but stopped himself. He wanted to call out to her but didn't know how to start. Gu Mingming frowned and looked at the wound on Elvis's shoulder. Feeling vexed, she shook her head and said, "My man was bitten to this extent. If I don't pull out all his teeth, I'm not Gu Mingming." With that, she turned to leave. Leah glanced back at Elvis with a conflicted gaze but he didn't say anything. He carried Gu Mingming and walked in the direction Elvis had come from. There was a rustling sound in the bushes and Gu Mingming knew that it was the little snake that Wabi had brought out from the Snake King Valley. She instructed, "Lead the way and find the person who bit Elvis for me." The little snake hissed and stuck out its tongue, replying to Gu Mingming in snake language. Then, it shot out in all directions like an arrow released from a bow, fanning out in a carpet search. How could Elvis let Gu Mingming leave just like that? Even if she had the powers of a beast king and a 5th-level pervert like Wabi was by her side, she was still his female. How could he be at ease if she rushed in without knowing anything? He quickly chased after her, wanting to pull her back from Lee's arms. But Gu Mingming turned her head to show her rejection. "Xiaoming." Elvis sighed and finally gave in. "I will tell you the truth, all right? Don't be angry, all right?" Gu Mingming then turned to look at Elvis. The words "lie and you will die" were clearly written on her face. Elvis was not afraid of the heavens, the earth, pain and death. But he was extremely afraid of this delicate little person in Lee's arms. There was nothing he could do when she was angry. "The stray beasts here are old acquaintances of mine," Elvis said with a frown. Gu Mingming was stunned. "Old acquaintance? Could it be?" Elvis nodded and said, "This is where I was born." Under Gu Mingming's signal, everyone stopped in their tracks and just stared at Elvis. Gu Mingming sighed and opened her arms towards Elvis in Lee's arms. "Hug." Elvis chuckled and took Gu Mingming back from Lee's arms. He kissed her face and took in her scent greedily. Only then did the uneasiness in his heart slowly dissipate. Wabi and Ian tactfully retreated far away, leaving space for the family of 3. Elvis carried Gu Mingming to a big tree and with a leap, he sat on a branch. Gu Mingming sat steadily in his arms, while Leah chose a branch that was slightly lower than Elvis and Gu Mingming to lie on, raising his head to look at Elvis and Gu Mingming. Elvis calmed his emotions and said slowly, "The person who bit me is my blood-related father beast." Chapter 792. Seeing that Gu Mingming's expression was not right, Elvis felt a little heartache and asked, "Actually, you don't have to force yourself to face them, I can handle it." Gu Mingming did not say a word and just lowered her head. She had already imagined a drama about the feud between the rich and the powerful. Elvis's father would throw a blank check at her face and say with a dark tone, "Fill in the amount yourself, take the money and get lost from my son. A woman like you is not worthy of my son." Then Gu Mingming would slap the table and stand up to retort with a classic line, "I'm different from the other women around him, I'm not with him for money." Then Elvis's father would sneer sinisterly, "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, very good. Then your friends around you will start to be unlucky one by one, I want to see how long you can fight with me for?" Gu Mingming had already started to shiver. When Elvis's father threw her a check, should she obediently accept it and then use the money to support Elvis? Or should she tear it into pieces domineeringly and throw it back at his father's face? Wait, she seemed to have neglected a very important question. What question was it? There were no checks in the beast world. Then, what would his father throw at her face? Be skin? Xiao Meng? Seeing that Gu Mingming did not answer him, Elvis's expression kept changing and no one knew what he was thinking. He was a little worried and frustrated. He had already tried his best not to get hurt, but that old fellow still bit his shoulder. Damn it. Gu Mingming looked up with a wronged expression. She pouted and asked, "Will you listen to your father?" "Elvis?" Gu Mingming continued, "If your father objects to you being with me, will you abandon me?" "Elvis?" Gu Mingming hugged Elvis's neck and said, "Let's elope, we'll return to Saint Nazaire now and hide far away from him." Elvis laughed out loud. All his worries were crushed into dust by her invitation to elope. The words that he wanted to explain and comfort were stuck in his throat, finally condensing into an indulgent one. Leah held his forehead, expressing his helplessness at this development. On the way here he had already noticed that something was wrong with Elvis. Combined with the aura of the orcs who were secretly following them, he could roughly guess the relationship between them and Elvis. But it was obvious that the relationship between Elvis and his beast father was different from what Gu Mingming had imagined. However, he and Elvis were happy to see her not getting involved in this mess, so Leah did not insist on it. He raised his head and said, "If you want to run you have to be quick. Otherwise they will catch up to us." Gu Mingming sat up straight and was about to climb down from the tree with Elvis. The moment she moved she was taken aback and smiled bitterly, "It's already too late." Leah and Elvis quickly straightened their bodies and entered a state of alertness. They knew very well that Gu Mingming's senses were sharper than theirs. Gu Mingming sat on a tree branch and pointed at the bushes not far away. She smiled and said, "Since we are already here, why hide?" The bushes shook a few times and a male stood up from the bushes. He was tall and burly, exuding an indescribable aura from his body. He looked very much like a darkened version of Elvis. His genes were so strong that there was no need for a DNA test. Aside from the topic, yeah, Daddy Elvis would be online tomorrow. So, today's update ended again. Chapter 793. Gu Mingming was still a little nervous when she saw that face. After all, it was her first time meeting an elder. "Greetings, great messenger." Elvis's father spoke first and bowed to Gu Mingming under the tree. Gu Mingming felt a little awkward. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and allowed him to carry her down from the tree. Just as she was about to say something to Elvis's father, Elvis spoke first. How dare you approach this place alone? Have you really gone senile?" Gu Mingming was taken aback and did not know what to say. 16 years old, so Elvis was in his rebellious phase now? "The injury on your shoulder doesn't seem to be enough to let you understand the difference between you and me, right?" Gu Mingming frowned. So Elvis's way of educating Kanwu was passed down from his ancestors? Did their family always have such a strong tone? Elvis placed Gu Mingming in Li's arms, then walked towards his beast father. Standing 3 steps away from them, they faced each other. Gu Mingming could almost see the sparks between their eyes. She could feel the sparks flying in their eyes. A male with a female is equivalent to having misgivings and weaknesses. "My stupid son, you are actually so deeply involved in it. You have really let down my expectations of you." Elvis sneered and moved his neck left and right. This was a small movement before he prepared to attack. Gu Mingming knew that once this small movement appeared, it meant that he was going to fight with his life on the line. He would not stop until he was dead. With his own father, did he need to be so ruthless? Gu Mingming was worried that something would really happen during the fight. She called out, Hubby, don't fool around. Elvis's back stiffened, but he still turned around and returned to Gu Mingming's side without any hesitation. His father did not say anything and just smiled in disdain. That smile was extremely sarcastic and arrogant, making people uncomfortable. She did not know how to describe that kind of oppression. Gu Mingming did not like this father-in-law. Even though his appearance was almost 80% similar to Elvis, she still did not like him. With conflict, her tone was naturally not very friendly. She said coldly, "I respect that you are Elvis's father, so I do not intend to treat you in any discordant manner. But I really do not like others to bully my man. So please stop before you go too far. If you have anything to say to me, please say it quickly and leave immediately. Because my man obviously doesn't want to see you." Elvis's father took a step forward and sized up Gu Mingming. It was not as if he was inspecting his daughter-in-law, but more like food. Gu Mingming did not like his gaze but did not want to argue with him. "You want to eat me?" He was just afraid that his teeth weren't good enough and he wouldn't be able to bite down. "I want the kiss of the ocean in your hands. Give it to me and I'll leave." "Impossible, I have other uses for this." Gu Mingming rejected him confidently. Elvis's father seemed to have expected that Gu Mingming would not agree so easily, so he lowered his shoulders slightly and stretched his shoulder blades. "Since that's the case, I can only rely on my own abilities to snatch it from you." Her malicious and murderous gaze landed on Elvis. "I heard that he is your first partner. Let's start with him. If you change your mind and are willing to give the kiss of the ocean to me, tell me. If it's in time, it might be able to save his life." Chapter 794. Both of their fighting styles were swift and fierce. Every move was aimed at fatal spots, and there was not the slightest bit of sloppiness in their movements. Gu Mingming also became nervous. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to control her emotions. A cold sensation wrapped around her ankle. Looking down, she saw a familiar snake tail wrapping itself around her. "Wabi-ai." Gu Mingming was puzzled. Wabi-ai yawned nonchalantly. "Only by protecting you can your little wolf have nothing to worry about. Didn't you realize? That fellow only needs to create the illusion that he is going to attack you, and your little wolf will be distracted. And he will always be on the defensive. Even though they are evenly matched, they are already at a disadvantage." Even though they knew that no one in the beast world could hurt her, she was still their weakness. These words were not just empty words. Indeed, after Wabi-ai protected Gu Mingming tightly, Elvis's passive situation was alleviated. Although he had already suffered many injuries, his gaze was more focused and his judgment sharpened. Including the time in the ocean, Gu Mingming had fought with stray beasts twice. She knew that the stray beasts' fighting style was brutal and ruthless, but she didn't know they could be this wild. If a battle between a proper tribe and a stray beast was like an NBA basketball game, exciting and tense, with no mistakes allowed and every shot determined the outcome of the game, then the battle between Elvis and his father was like an underground basketball game with a life and death contract. Winning and losing was not just about the game but also about life and death. So, unless Elvis died or killed his own father with his own hands, this battle would not stop? Was he going to force his own son to this extent just for the kiss of the ocean? Gu Mingming really couldn't understand the family relationships in the beast world. She thought that Elvis and Kanwa's interaction was already weird enough, who knew that it was already the gentle version. "Mingming, are you going to eat the kiss of the ocean?" Leah suddenly asked. Gu Mingming was taken aback for 2 seconds before she immediately smiled. "Yes, I am going to eat it. That way no one will keep thinking about it and steal it." As expected, Elvis's father panicked the moment she said that. He didn't even care about his battle with Elvis or Wabi-ai, who was protecting Gu Mingming. He pounced at Gu Mingming, prepared to snatch the kiss of the ocean from her hands. The moment he revealed a flaw, Elvis bit his thigh without hesitation and pulled him back forcefully. He threw him onto the ground and stepped on the back of his waist, looking down on him like a messenger from hell pronouncing death. His face was cold and calm, as if even the most basic fear towards death had disappeared. A trace of regret flashed in his father's eyes, but he immediately felt relieved. He coldly snorted, "The winner takes all. If you want to kill me, then kill me." Elvis had no intention to be courteous with him. He raised his sharp claws and dug straight for his heart. "Wait." Gu Mingming opened her mouth and only used 2 words to disperse Elvis's murderous aura. The claws transformed into human hands in midair and Elvis tilted his head to look at Gu Mingming, as if waiting for her to continue. Gu Mingming knew that Elvis didn't have a good impression of his father. Even if he didn't know what had happened in the past, Gu Mingming still had the ability to tell the truth. But Gu Mingming still couldn't kill her own father with her own hands. Chapter 795. I can't give you the kiss of the ocean, but if you are willing to tell me what you need it for, maybe I can think of other ways to help you. Gu Mingming pushed Wabi away and walked to Elvis's side. Opening her arms, she made a gesture of asking for a hug. She wasn't afraid of Elvis's murderous aura, but she hoped that she could bring Elvis peace and happiness. Killing might be the simplest and most direct way to solve problems, but it would never make one happy. Her man shouldn't struggle in the midst of killing. Elvis had never resisted Gu Mingming's closeness. It was the same at all times. He carried Gu Mingming up, then retreated warily. Wabi stood lazily between Elvis and his father, while Leah stood half a step in front of Elvis. Even Ian was hidden in the treetops in a defensive position. There were also countless little snakes waiting in the bushes. As long as Elvis's father made the slightest misstep, these few forces would rush out to tear him to shreds and slaughter him. He sighed. It could be said that an ambitious man was short of breath. He forced himself up. As a stray beast, he knew all too well how passive his current situation was. Death was clearly the release he had always been seeking, but he couldn't die now. He couldn't let go of the person he originally hated. If he, the leader of the stray beasts, died, what would become of that person's situation? He should be feeling the thrill of revenge, but his heart just clenched painfully. I want to use it to save someone, Elvis's father said. Who? Gu Mingming asked. Elvis's father hesitated for a moment, but still raised his hand and pointed at Elvis. His mother. Your wife. Gu Mingming blurted out, but immediately realized that she had said something wrong. If Elvis's mother was his wife, how could he have become a stray beast? So, as expected, Elvis's father shuddered as if a sharpened bamboo had pierced his heart. Gu Mingming knew that she had said the wrong thing, and that an apology would be too pretentious. She changed the topic. What's wrong with her? Elvis's father's gaze was a little cloudy. He lowered his head and said with difficulty, She's dying. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She turned to look at Elvis. Elvis's face was expressionless, as if he was listening to a story that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't that he was cold-blooded, but he was too unfamiliar with the word, mother. In his entire life he had never felt any warmth from his mother. On the contrary, almost all the suffering he had suffered in his childhood came from that female. Sympathy, it was too difficult for Elvis. But he had never mentioned all these to Gu Mingming. It was not that he did not want to be comforted, but he did not want those ugly memories to appear in her memory. As long as she was by his side, it was already a great comfort. Gu Mingming knew that Elvis did not have a happy childhood and suffered a lot. She did not want to force Elvis to forgive his parents, but at least let them live. This way, when Elvis wanted to forgive them one day, he would have the chance to hear that, sorry. Leah. Gu Mingming turned towards Leah. Leah was the professional when it came to saving lives. Chapter 796. Glancing at Elvis's father, Gu Mingming shook her head. Let's go together. Leah tilted his head and raised his brows. Are you belittling me and thinking that I will be bullied? Gu Mingming shook her head. I can't bear to be separated from you, not even for a second. Yeah, this was a reason he could not reject. Leah knew that Gu Mingming was just trying to appease him, but he could not bear to expose this sweet little lie. The feeling of being pestered by her felt so good. Looking up at Elvis, Leah chuckled. First partner, the female has spoken. What should we do? The place that had once been like hell to him no longer held any special meaning now. The male whom he had once thought he would never be able to defeat, now had one of his legs bitten to pieces by him. The female whom he had repeatedly resented for giving birth to him. He could not even remember what she looked like now. Even so, since Xiaoming felt that he should go and see her, then so be it. Carrying Gu Mingming, he slowly walked in front of his father. Elvis looked at him coldly as if he was looking at a stranger. He slowly opened his mouth. His voice sounded like a soul-sucking demon from hell. Peter, you better not play any tricks. Otherwise, I can easily destroy everything you have now, including that female. Threatening his own father, be it his expression or words, were much sharper than when he was fighting Canwo. In comparison, Elvis was practically a loving father to Canwo. Gu Mingming facepalmed. She no longer had the energy to criticize the way this father and son interacted with each other. Ignoring Peter, Elvis walked past him and headed towards the place where he used to rest based on his memory. Wuxia continued to follow lazily while Ian circled in the sky. Leah was unexpectedly kind and used a tree branch as a splint to fix Peter's leg in place. Then he wagged his tail and followed beside Gu Mengmeng. He smiled slyly and asked her to repeat that she couldn't bear to leave him, not even for a second. Perhaps this was the first time someone had entered the stray beast's territory of their own accord. Moreover, he looked like he was on an outing and seemed to be in a good mood. This scene was especially strange in the eyes of the stray beasts. A 5th-level snake beast, a 5th-level wolf beast, a 4th-level snow fox and a 3rd-level birdman. This combination was not to be trifled with. However, the little beauty in the wolf beast's arms looked very alluring and smelled very nice. The primitive restlessness triggered a series of low whimpers. His lecherous and greedy gaze lingered on Gu Mengmeng, making her feel extremely displeased. Cupping Elvis's face with both hands, she looked at Leah and said, "If you feel uncomfortable, you must tell me." The two males chuckled, feeling rather helpless, but they could only nod their heads. Then Gu Mengmeng swept a cold glance across the area and instantly unleashed a powerful suppressive force, causing those stray beasts to collapse to the ground. Elvis and Wuxia were still all right, while Leah looked like he was struggling to hold on. But Ian, who was flying in midair, fell straight down. He looked at Gu Mengmeng with a pitiful expression. "Sorry," Gu Mengmeng stuck her tongue out at Ian apologetically. 1st-level and 2nd-level stray beasts were forced back to their original forms by Gu Mengmeng. 3rd-level and above stray beasts might not die, but their brains were also in a mess. Beast King level? Beast King? His bones were trembling and his only instinct was to escape. Chapter 797. The layout of the cave reminded Gu Mengmeng of the water curtain cave in Journey to the West. Apart from the fact that there was no waterfall at the entrance, any monkey would be able to pull up the great sage equaling heaven's flag with a pole. She really couldn't tell that this was the cave of a stray beast leader. She had thought that stray beasts lived in places that were as grand as the Lion Camel Ridge. Taking a few steps in, she saw a thick bed made from animal skin. A female lay on it, so skinny that she barely resembled a human. Gu Mengmeng shot Leah a look and he walked up to check on her condition. Surprisingly, she didn't have any external injuries or internal illnesses. She just looked like she was about to die. Leah looked at Peter and asked, "How long has she been like this?" Peter frowned. "She has been like this since the end of the monsoon season. She refused to eat and has been starving." Gu Mengmeng instinctively glanced at Elvis. Elvis's expression was indifferent and he didn't react at all. He really treated this female as a stranger. Gu Mengmeng sighed. "You guys go out first. I want to talk to her." Elvis surveyed the surroundings. After confirming that this female was alone, he didn't have anything to worry about. He turned to leave first. Peter was worried but had no other choice but to follow. After everyone left, Gu Mengmeng sat beside the female. "I am Gu Mengmeng. I am Elvis's partner." The female's eyes brightened at that. Her first reaction was to look at the cave entrance. But Elvis had already walked far away. She couldn't even see his back. There was a moment of disappointment, but it wasn't too obvious. She just lowered her head and didn't say a word. "Shall I call Elvis in and let him talk to you?" Gu Mengmeng probed. The female seemed to hesitate for a moment before shaking her head. "I don't have the face to see him. As long as he is alive, that's enough." All mothers were the same. How could they not dote on their own children? Gu Mengmeng saw that the female was willing to talk about Elvis, so she continued asking. "Elvis has never been willing to tell me about his childhood. But I am actually quite curious. If you are willing, why don't you tell me about Elvis when he was young?" The female's gaze dimmed. Her eyelids drooped and even her fingertips trembled. "His childhood was a disaster. You shouldn't have brought him back here. It wasn't easy for him to escape." Thinking about how Elvis and his father met, Gu Mengmeng could almost understand what the so-called disaster was about. "But I heard that you're very sick. We can't just leave you to die. After all, you are Elvis's mother," Gu Mengmeng said. The female closed her eyes slowly and a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye onto the beast's skin. "Elvis, perhaps he wished that he never had a mother like me. You guys go, don't worry about me. This is the price I should pay." Gu Mengmeng did not understand what she meant, she just felt that the teardrop was really sad. "Maybe you can tell me about your difficulties." Maybe I can help you. The female shook her head. He won't agree. No one can save me. I'm already very satisfied to know that Elvis is safe and sound before I die. I can die without regrets. Chapter 798. The female was clearly smiling, but her face was filled with despair. Why? Gu Mingming didn't understand. She could understand if she had wanted to die from the torment and humiliation she had suffered when she was kidnapped by the stray beasts. Now Elvis was already 16 years old. If she wanted to die from the humiliation, wasn't that too long a reaction? Peter's attitude towards this female was not the same as a normal stray beast's attitude towards a female he had kidnapped. She could tell from the place she lived and Peter's willingness to risk his life to snatch the kiss of the ocean for her. Not to mention her current level of power, just the presence of Elvis and Wabiai alone was enough to put him in a perilous situation. For him to be willing to risk his life for her. Gu Mingming didn't believe that he didn't treat her well. So Gu Mingming just couldn't understand why she suddenly didn't want to live. Do you know what despair is? The female spoke slowly. Her voice was as soft as a feather being blown away by the wind. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't even be able to hear her voice. Despair? Gu Mingming didn't have a deep understanding of this word. In the modern world, she was the kind of person whose grandmother didn't care for her and uncle didn't love her. When she was 4 years old, her father had an affair and married a young mistress, forcing her mother to divorce. When she was 6 years old, her mother brought her along to remarry. Then she began a long life of watching her mother suffer domestic abuse because she was a burden. Every day she would tremble all over at the sound of the door. She was truly terrified. But this kind of life only lasted until she was 13 years old. Her stepfather could no longer tolerate an extra person in the house, so she was chased out. Holding her 2-year-old brother in her arms, Mom chose the latter between her and her family. Many people said she was pitiful, deserving of sympathy and pity. But she didn't think so. There were curves in life and it wouldn't always go down. When you were extremely unlucky, you would always be able to live on. So she tried her best to find a place where she could work without identification. Even if the pay was low, as long as food and lodging were provided. Although it was tough, she still felt that her life was getting better day by day. Despair was never a word that existed in her dictionary. After transmigrating to the beast deity, she was very flustered and did not know what to do. However, Elvis and Leah had given her more warmth and love than the accumulated 18 years of being together in the modern world. Although there would always be problems, she had never doubted the happiness she had. So, what kind of despair would make this female give up her life? It was a long and slow process of torture. During this process, every second was torture. Your stomach would constantly challenge your determination to die. But even so, she actually endured for nearly half a year. Chapter 799. After that, I even started to persuade Peter to stay. In order to prevent him from hurting my males, I even took the initiative to seduce him. The female's gaze remained blank, as if she was narrating someone else's story in the third person. It would not hurt so much if it had nothing to do with her. It was then that I became pregnant with Elvis. At the mention of Elvis, the female instinctively looked towards the entrance of the cave. Unfortunately, there was nothing there. Although I did not love Peter, it was my first pregnancy after all. I was still very happy. But Peter was forcing me to choose between my children and my only remaining companion. He said that if I wanted to keep my partner, I had to mate with him until the child was miscarried. If I wanted to keep my child, then he had to leave this cave immediately until I gave birth. But the price was that the 2 remaining marks on my body would disappear. Gu Mingming frowned. She could understand if she said that she could not tolerate other males because she was too possessive. But wasn't it too perverted to mate until the child was miscarried? After all, it was his own flesh and blood in that womb. The female seemed to have seen Gu Mingming's expression, or rather, she did not care about Gu Mingming's reaction. She just needed an outlet to vent all the emotions that she had not dared to express all these years. I was ultimately selfish. I wanted to keep my child. So that night, the 2 marks on my chest disappeared at the same time. Even though I kept praying for them to escape, they still died. For the sake of the child in my womb, I forced myself to live on. I had to live on. So no matter how much I vomited or how much pain I was in, I gritted my teeth and persevered. But when my child was not even a month old, he took them all away. I was imprisoned in this cave, unable to see the light of day. In order to see my child, I gave up my pride and everything to please him. But all I got in return was one nightmare after another. Out of the 6 wolf pups, only Elvis survived. He kept using Elvis to threaten me. As long as I showed the slightest sign of disobedience, he would torture Elvis. I did not even dare to die. During the rainy season, I finally knew that my Elvis was so strong that he could no longer hurt me easily. I could finally be at ease. Finally I am free. He killed my partner, killed my son, imprisoned me here and tortured me. And after so many years, even my hatred has been worn away. True despair is when I don't even have the desire to kill him for revenge. There's nothing in this world that I'm reluctant to part with anymore. Be it love or hate, there's nothing left. Gu Mingming quietly listened to her finish recounting the past, not interrupting in the middle. Until she had finished, she slowly closed her eyes, looking as if her heart was as still as water and only wished for death. Gu Mingming then tested the waters. Maybe I can bring you away. Bring you to Saint Nazir to live with me and Elvis? In this case, are you willing? The female's eyelashes fluttered. Gu Mingming's words were like a pebble thrown into the calm lake in her heart, causing ripples to form. Chapter 800. That's right, given her current condition, even if she ate properly, she might not survive the winter, much less looking like she was begging for death. Elvis and I have 4 sons. It's a pity we didn't bring them along this time. Don't you want to meet them? Gu Mingming continued trying to persuade her. The female's lips curled up slightly as if she was comforted. But she didn't say a word. Instead, she looked like she could be at ease. Gu Mingming held the female's hand gently. She had seen so many battles between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law in television dramas, but never imagined that her first meeting with her mother-in-law would be to persuade her not to commit suicide. Perhaps her body was really weak. After speaking so much, she had already fallen asleep from exhaustion. Gu Mingming pulled up the beast's skin and covered her up before leaving the cave. Elvis seemed to have become impatient from waiting. Just as he was about to go berserk, he finally saw her coming out from inside and his tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He scooped her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Only then did he feel at ease. Peter looked into the cave with concern in his eyes. Even though he couldn't see the female from this angle. Gu Mingming said, "She said a lot and is very weak now. She has already fallen asleep." Peter was taken aback. He stared at Gu Mingming in disbelief for a long time. He said doubtfully, She spoke to you?" Gu Mingming nodded. Peter was so agitated that he almost cried. "She's willing to speak. It's good that she's willing to speak. She hasn't spoken for months. No matter what I do, she won't say a single word." Gu Mingming really didn't understand. Since Peter loved her so much, why did he do such cruel things to hurt her? What was his motive? "Lower your voice. She just fell asleep." Before Gu Mingming finished her sentence, Peter was already nodding and keeping his mouth shut, not daring to make a sound. Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and gestured for him to walk out. Peter wanted to ask more about the female, so he naturally followed. When they were far enough away, Gu Mingming asked Elvis to stop. She then frowned and sized Peter up. "What did she say to you?" Peter desperately wanted to know every word she said. Even if it was just a paraphrase, it would be a great comfort to him. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and did not speak. She just stared at Peter. Wabi said lazily, "I'm tired. I'll find a place to sleep. Wake me up when it's time to eat." Ian rolled his eyes at Gu Mingming with a face that looked like he was about to die. It was obvious that he was still holding a grudge against her for releasing her pressure outside and causing him to fall. Without saying a word, he left with Wabi. Leah sighed. Although he was also Gu Mingming's partner now, this was clearly an old matter of the Elvis family and it was not convenient for him to listen in. Hence, he kissed Gu Mingming's little face and said, "We haven't had lunch yet. I'll go prepare something delicious for you. Auntie looks very weak, so I'll prepare some good food for her." Gu Mingming understood everyone's consideration, so she nodded and returned a kiss on Lee's cheek. "Thank you." Leah lightly scratched Gu Mingming's little nose and smiled. "Silly girl, why are you thanking me?" Chapter 801. What truth? Peter asked. Gu Mingming looked at Peter's expression and knew that he had already guessed it. It was just that he was unwilling to admit or mention it. "She said that she was the one who turned you into a stray beast. So you were once partners? I can see that you have deep feelings for her. She doesn't seem like an unreasonable female. Why did she make a fuss to remove the mating mark? Peter laughed bitterly. His gaze drifted towards the cave. He said in an obscure voice, "She really talked to you?" Gu Mingming sighed. "If you really don't want to tell me, I won't force you. But let me tell you the truth. Given her current condition, she can't survive the coming winter. Even if I give you the kiss of the ocean, she won't be able to withstand the immense power of the kiss of the ocean in her current condition. If you force it on her, she will only explode and die prematurely." Peter frowned. He glared at Gu Mingming with a murderous look. Gu Mingming's words about that female dying had clearly hurt him. But this little female who said she would die was the only female who could make him speak in the past few months. Perhaps she really had a way? Suppressing his dissatisfaction, Peter slowly said, "I removed the mating mark, because she didn't like me from the start. No matter what I did, she would only hide from me. She would run away the moment she saw me. She didn't give me any chance at all. So I used force on her." Gu Mingming was dumbfounded. Did he really rape her? No wonder she wanted to remove the mating mark with him regardless of whether you lived or died. If it were her, she wouldn't have allowed a rapist's mark to remain on her body. "You don't have to look at me like that. I never felt that I did anything wrong." Peter lifted his head and continued, "Firstly, I was able to snatch her away from her partner and forcefully mate with her in a deserted place. This proves that her partner is too weak and can't protect her at all. She needs a strong partner to ensure her own safety. Secondly, if I mate with her, it will be a gamble with my own life. After I mate with her, her life will be my life. She will know that I will not harm her at all. She does not need to be afraid of me. As long as she is not afraid of me, she will slowly realize how good I am. I am confident that I can move her. Even if she cannot fall in love with me in the end, I am willing to stay by her side unloved for the rest of my life and protect her from all dangers. Even if I can only become food in the end, I am willing." But obviously, I lost. Even if I put my life in her hands, she was still unwilling to look at me. She was still afraid of me, still resisted me, still didn't believe that I wouldn't hurt her. Gu Mingming coldly interrupted Peter's words. "The facts prove that you have hurt her. A scumbag will always be a scumbag. No matter how much love you pretend to have, you can't change the fact that you tortured her for more than 10 years. "I didn't," Peter denied agitatedly. Not to be outdone, Gu Mingming questioned him. "You didn't? You raped her and you still say you didn't?" "I just needed a chance to prove to her that I love her," Peter growled. Gu Mingming laughed coldly. "You forced her to do something she doesn't like just because you love her? Have you ever thought about how helpless, how humiliated, and how scared your so-called opportunity made her feel? You are in the process of hurting her to prove that she doesn't need to fear you? What a preposterous argument." Aside from the topic, a man used all his resources to buy a whole cart of bananas to confess to the girl he loved. The girl rejected him. Then, everyone started discussing and criticizing the girl for not knowing what was good for her. She had given up everything for you, yet you still rejected her. The girl felt very innocent and helpless. She had never asked a guy to do such things for her. Moreover, she didn't like bananas at all. So, Susu said that blindly giving up in love was meaningless. Unrestrained giving would only move one's heart and coerce one's lover. Learn to love and know how to give others what they want, not what you want to give them. Chapter 802. Peter clenched his fists and growled angrily, "Since that's the case, why doesn't she just kill me to vent her anger? If she hates me, she can just kill me. None of her partners can defeat you, how can she kill you?" Gu Mingming roared back, refusing to back down. Peter laughed coldly. "If she wants me dead, she just needs to say the word and I will personally dig open my own chest and crush my heart in front of her. As long as she can feel just a little bit of happiness for me, just a little bit." Gu Mingming was completely speechless. Where did the males in the beast world get their weird views on love from? They were practically twisted into instant noodles. But she didn't do it even once. How much does she hate me to use such a method to torture me? Peter seemed to have lost all his energy and fell to the ground. The wound on his leg split open and blood flowed out. But he continued as if he didn't feel anything. "Even though I became a stray beast, I still love her. No matter how many females I snatched, I never touched any of them. If it wasn't her, I would feel disgusted, so I went back to snatch her back. I thought that since I am already a stray beast, snatching females is the most normal thing to do. So what if I don't have a mating contract? I just want to keep her by my side. I want to torture her, I want to take revenge on her. But in the end, every time I see her, I lose all will. Every time she cries, my world is thrown into chaos. Everyone says that stray beasts are heartless, but why does my heart still hurt so much? Gu Mingming frowned and asked, since that's the case, why did you still kill her partners and make her sad? Peter looked up and stared at Gu Mingming in a daze for a moment. Suddenly he laughed. She still thinks that I killed her partners? Even after so many years she still thinks so? She still doesn't believe that I would not hurt her. Gu Mingming frowned and thought to herself, could it be a misunderstanding? But she clearly said that every time Peter left the house, a few marks on her body would disappear. Once or twice could be a coincidence, but wasn't it too far-fetched to claim that it was a coincidence every time? Peter sighed and said, she refuses to talk to me now. She won't believe anything I say. I'll tell you the truth and you help me persuade her, okay? Gu Mingming did not directly agree but said, that depends on how real your truth is and whether it is worth my help. Peter's face was full of sorrow. It was faint but it didn't melt away. After I snatched Natalie back, her other partners went crazy looking for me all over the world. Then they found this place. They contacted the other males who had their females snatched away and started a fight. But how could a bunch of fellows with no battle experience other than hunting compete with stray beasts? Every time they attack, I'm not there to kill. I'm there to save people. But they refused to listen to me and I had to hide my identity from the other stray beasts. I really tried my best but I couldn't save everyone every time. Like you said, I can't save someone who wants to die. Their attack back then was no different from suicide. I tried my best, I really tried my best. But in the end, not a single one of them was saved. Peter's expression was especially heavy, as if he had not forgotten the look in Natalie's eyes when she had wronged him and misunderstood him. Chapter 803. Then why didn't you explain? Gu Mingming asked. Peter looked like he had heard a joke and countered, explain? It was the first time she smiled at me and asked me not to leave in a coquettish manner. She was clearly trembling in fear, but she still snuggled into my arms, sobbing as she said she was afraid of the dark, that she needed me and wanted me to hug her. How should I explain? How should I push her away and tell her that I didn't kill her partners? She didn't need to please me like this. Even though I knew she was lying to me, I couldn't reject her. I couldn't say that I didn't need her. Damn it, I can't get rid of this greed. Gu Mingming's heart was clawed. Peter dug his hand into his hair and grabbed it, as if he wanted to tear his own head off. I don't want her partners to die more than anyone else. As long as they are alive, Natalie will continue to act coquettishly to me to protect them. Just for this lie, I will damn risk my life to keep her partners alive. But what could I do? Those two idiots thought that I was using them to threaten Natalie, so they charged towards the cliff. As they fell, they laughed and told me that I no longer had any bargaining chips to keep Natalie in captivity. I wanted so badly to grab them and dig out their brains to see what was in them. If they were all dead, all the more I can't let Natalie go. Apart from me, there's no one else around her who can prepare food for her. How can I let her go? Gu Mingming frowned and said, but she said you forced her to choose between her children and those two partners. Peter shook his head and said, when I forced her to choose, those two idiots were not dead yet. Her first and second partners were marked on her chest. I thought those two fellows were important enough to her for her to give up the child in her womb for them. After all, that child belonged to me, the person she hated to the core. At that time, I decided to abort the child, then let her go, because I knew that her partners would not give up on trying to save her. If those two also died in the end, she would break down. Gu Mingming instinctively looked at Elvis and pursed her lips in silence. She almost couldn't see her husband anymore. Was it an ancestral tradition for their family to want to kill their own son? Instinctively, she hugged Elvis's neck as if he would disappear anytime. Towards Gu Mingming's inexplicable uneasiness, Elvis's response was to kiss her little face gently and comfort her. Don't be afraid, I won't leave you. Yeah. Gu Mingming nodded and pressed her face against Elvis's. Peter's eyes were filled with envy as he watched their little interaction. He turned his head and said, even if it was just once, if she could rely on me like this, we would not have ended up in this state today. Gu Mingming did not say anything because their entanglement was misplaced right from the start. No matter what reason they had, forcing a female to mate against her will was not worth forgiving. Peter continued. Natalie is willing to stay by my side for the sake of the child in her womb. Perhaps, This is the kindest and cruelest thing she has ever done to me. Chapter 804. Elvis was unbelievably calm. He wasn't affected by Peter's words at all. He just said coldly, "It's not a question of whether I believe it or not because I don't care at all." Peter chuckled and nodded. "That's right. I don't care either. It doesn't matter whether you or your other brothers survive as long as one survives." One survives? Gu Mingming clearly remembered Natalie saying that she gave birth to 6. She was so sad that she had never heard Elvis mention his brothers. Were they all dead? Peter gazed in the direction of the cave in a daze. Stray beasts should not have children. Stray beasts only capture females to satisfy their lust. Children? That's a disgrace. I don't care if I can inherit my bloodline. I was abandoned by the beast deity, what's there to inherit? But those are the children Natalie gave birth to for me. Possible. I still wish for them to exist. Since that's the case, why did you kill your own children and purposely use this information to agitate her? Gu Mingming couldn't understand. Was this the so-called love-hate relationship? Do you know how sorrowful Natalie looked when she mentioned those children? Sorrowful expression? Peter suddenly smiled as if he was comforted. Looks like those children didn't die in vain. Gu Mingming clenched her fists. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. How could this person before her be so comforted by the death of his own children? What did he mean by not dying in vain? Gu Mingming suddenly thought of something Elvis had said to her in the past. He said that it was worth it to use all the sufferings in the past to become strong enough to protect her. She said that it was fine if she was a little weaker. Her heart ached for the hardships he had suffered as a child. But he said, if he was a little weaker he might not have the chance to stand before her. At that time she thought he meant that she only liked the strong. If he wasn't strong enough she wouldn't like him. But now it seemed like she had misunderstood. He meant that if he was a little weaker, then one of the 5 dead children would be Elvis. Gu Mingming's heart ached at the thought of her own man almost dying in Peter's twisted love. She really wanted to slap him to death to prevent any future troubles. When all her partners died she wanted to use death to leave me. She had already abandoned me once. How could I let her abandon me again? Furthermore, she is so beautiful, if she dies she will definitely return to the embrace of the beast deity, while I am destined to be abandoned and fall into hell. Come to think of it, Natalie still trusted me. She trusted me in order to abandon me. She said that this child was the only gift she had given me. I loved her so much that I would definitely treat our child well. So she can die without any worries. I can't let her have nothing to worry about, I can't. She can't give me the child and leave me forever. I won't allow it. Gu Mingming felt so suffocated that she did not even want to hear him continue. She knew how crazy males could be for love. Snake had used his own life to teach her a lesson. However, there was a difference between madness and distortion. Chapter 805. I know. In order for her to live, I continuously tortured our child so that she would not have a shred of trust in me. Only then would she not dare to die. Even if she hates me, it doesn't matter. It's good enough that she can live. Peter was smiling, but his lips and eyes were tinged with bitterness. Since that's the case, why is she so determined to seek death now? Gu Mingming had always been a soft-hearted person, but she could not sympathize with Peter at all. A pitiful person must have a detestable side. She only wanted to protect Natalie's life now. Although Elvis had no impression of her at all, at least that female was willing to endure the torture for Elvis. Death was a form of release, but in order to protect her son, she chose to live in humiliation. Every day was difficult, but she still gritted her teeth and struggled to hold on. Elvis might not have seen or felt warmth, but that did not mean her motherly love did not exist. Peter shook his head. After Elvis escaped from here, Natalie made a deal with me. She would stay by my side obediently. In exchange, I would let Elvis go and never look for him again. Gu Mingming frowned. A thought suddenly flashed across her mind. She hurriedly asked, when did Natalie start her hunger strike? When the monsoon season was about to end. Peter replied. When the monsoon season was about to end, at that time, Gu Mingming lowered her eyes. During that period did anyone special come by? Peter was taken aback. He seemed to have thought of something but shook his head without saying a word. Gu Mingming laughed coldly. You still want to hide it from me now? It doesn't matter. If you don't want to say, so be it. With that, Gu Mingming hugged Elvis's neck and turned her face to the side. She ignored Peter. Her heart felt suffocated. Whether it was Peter or Natalie, there was a similarity in their words. They did not mention anything about what had happened to Elvis when he was young. Peter had used the simple word torture to cover up all the details. He was obviously trying to cover it up. Elvis, Peter and Natalie were the only 3 survivors of that so-called torture. They stood on different sides and hated each other. But they had a tacit understanding to not mention anything about the past. What was he hiding? Elvis did not like Gu Mingming to be dragged into those unpleasant things. It was clearly the past. What was the point of bringing it up? What did the entanglement between Natalie and Peter have to do with him? What right did he have to involve his female? Displeasure. Deep anger was written all over Elvis's face. Leah should be back soon. Let's eat something first. Elvis didn't want Gu Mingming and Peter to stay in the same space anymore. Because of Peter's presence, the air was filled with the stench of blood, making one lose their appetite. With that, Elvis carried Gu Mingming and walked towards the outskirts of the territory. Leah had already started a fire outside and cooked the food until it was 80% done. He originally wanted to go in and call them when the fire was ready, but he didn't expect them to come out before the food was ready. Leah smiled and said, "It's almost done, we can eat in a while." Chapter 806. Gu Mingming relied on Elvis, and Elvis had always known this. But today she was abnormally clingy. Even during mealtimes she wanted Leah to feed her, and her little hand was still hanging around Elvis's neck, unwilling to let go for even a second. Elvis thought, perhaps it was because Peter's story made her feel bad? Frowning, he wiped her mouth that was stained from eating. "You have seen the person and the story is over. Let's go back. The children are still waiting." Elvis's heart ached at the slightest discomfort in Gu Mingming's heart. He could not forgive Peter for using those terrible things in the past to upset Gu Mingming. He had to settle this score sooner or later. But compared to venting his anger, it was more important to bring Gu Mingming away from this dark and broken place, and not let her continue to be affected. Gu Mingming shook her head and looked up at Elvis. Her lips were pressed into a straight line, and her eyes clearly showed that she had something on her mind, but she refused to open her mouth. Her expression made Elvis's heart ache and feel helpless. He looked up at Leah, gesturing for him to think of a solution. But Leah just shrugged with a "she's hanging in your arms, not even looking at me. What can I do?" expression. He took the pot that had been used for the meal and went to wash it. It was obvious that he wanted to stay out of this matter. Elvis frowned. He was willing to do anything for Gu Mingming. As long as it was for her good, he would do it. But he was not as good at controlling her emotions as Leah was. If she didn't speak, he was at his wit's end. "Xiaoming?" Elvis sighed softly and stroked her little head, asking, "What exactly are you thinking about? Tell me, won't you?" Gu Mingming still pursed her lips and refused to speak. She just hugged Elvis's neck and refused to let go. She rubbed her little face against the pit of Elvis's neck and breathed evenly and warmly on his neck. Elvis really had no way of dealing with Gu Mingming. He liked her coquettishness and dependence, and wished that she could grow on his body and never leave his side. But the prerequisite for all this was for her to be happy. Her troubled look made his heart wrench. He had already brought out the little wolf cub, but she still refused to return to Saint Nazir. She didn't know what kind of magic potion the female had fed her back in the cave, but it only took a short while for her to become like this. He still preferred her when she rolled up her sleeves and said she wanted to pick a fight with someone. He gently cupped the back of her head and allowed her to act shamelessly in his arms. His voice was gentle and filled with indulgence and slight helplessness. "What should I do to make you happy? As long as you say it, I'll do it for you, okay?" Gu Mingming thought for a while before raising her head to look at Elvis. She said hesitantly, "I want to save Natalie, will you help me?" Chapter 807. Gu Mingming was speechless. Why did Elvis sound like he was buying a pet for his wife in front of a pet shop? Also, what did he mean by there shouldn't be any males willing to mate with her? Was he blatantly trying to find a stepfather for himself? "Elvis, you sure have a big heart. I'll go ask Peter for her. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll destroy him. It'll be considered as getting rid of a pest for the people." As Elvis said that, he tried to release Gu Mingming from his arms, but she refused to let go of his neck. He didn't dare to pull her away and could only allow her to cling on to him. Then he turned around and walked towards Peter, saying, "Will you not be sad if I bring Natalie back to you?" Gu Mingming shook her head. Elvis stopped in his tracks and looked at Gu Mingming in a daze. Gu Mingming said softly, "I am not sad because of Natalie and Peter. It is because of you." A chill ran down Elvis's spine. He was a little flustered but did not know what to do. He blurted out, "Xiaoming, I'm sorry I was wrong. Don't be angry. Tell me, what did I do to upset you? I'll change right away, okay?" Gu Mingming cupped Elvis's face and directly kissed his lips. After a long while, Gu Mingming finally released Elvis with a red face. "Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I just feel heartache." Elvis froze on the spot, a warm feeling in his heart. This was the first time Mingming took the initiative to kiss him. His Xiaoming took the initiative to kiss him. "I am already the happiest person in this world. Why do you still feel heartache for me?" Elvis's lips curled upwards uncontrollably, his blue eyes filled with happiness. Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and hugged him tightly. She whispered into his ear, "Not enough, not enough. I want you to be even happier. I want to make up for what I lost when I was young." Elvis laughed at her words. He pinched her armpits and pulled her away. He raised her up to his eyes and stared into her eyes. "So you are in a bad mood because of what happened to me when I was young?" Gu Mingming's eyes were filled with tears. Gu Mingming nodded, her eyes watery. After inheriting Snake's memories, she thought that her heart was already hard enough and her emotions were numb enough. There was nothing more tragic that could move her. But she was wrong. Her strength and numbness were so fragile when she met the person she valued. The moment she thought of how Elvis had suffered unspeakable pain in a place unknown to her, she felt her chest tighten and her breathing became uneven. The scariest thing was not what exactly happened to Elvis back then, but the fact that the entire world was hiding it from her, not letting her know what Elvis had experienced back then. This made her imagination grow even more limitless and she was almost driven crazy by her own imagination. "Is this also the reason you want to save Natalie?" Elvis asked. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "I want her to live so that she can have the chance to make up for the happiness you missed in your childhood." Elvis pinched Gu Mingming's face and said, "Silly girl, what are you thinking about? No matter when, the only one who can give me happiness is you. Your smiling face is the salvation that pulled me out of hell. Other than you, no one can make me happy." Chapter 808. Elvis lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's collarbone. His voice was low and hoarse, his gaze as deep as the ocean. "No matter what you want to do, I will support you. But you have to promise me that you will not be sad. If you are sad, my heart will shatter into pieces. It will hurt a lot." Gu Mingming returned a kiss on Elvis's forehead. Her gaze was peaceful and gentle. Her voice was light as a feather as it brushed against Elvis's heart. "As long as all of you are well, nothing can make me sad." Elvis knew that the all of you Gu Mingming was referring to included him, Leah and the 4 little ones. It could even include Sandy, Oriton, Ian, Wabi and everyone else she cared about. Actually, it was not an easy task to make everyone well. After all, males were in a battle and their lives were uncertain. Snake was the only one in the entire beast world who could live to the extent that he did. But for Gu Mingming, Elvis was willing to put all his weight on himself to protect everyone she cared about. As long as she was well. Gu Mingming leaned against Elvis's chest. Her gaze was filled with faint heartache. "Hubby, can you tell me about your childhood? I'm almost going crazy from my imagination." Halfway through her sentence, Gu Mingming suddenly shut her mouth and retorted, "If mentioning those memories will make you feel pain again, it's fine if you don't tell me. I don't really want to know." Elvis rubbed Gu Mingming's head and smiled. "Silly girl, didn't I tell you before? Although those past times were not beautiful, they allowed me to become a stronger version of myself. I used them to meet you. So, as the price I should pay for meeting you, I still feel that it is too little. Actually, it can be more painful." Gu Mingming was amused by Elvis's serious tone. Her doe-like eyes shone with a sweet light as she said, "No wonder our sons always say that you and Leah are abnormal. Who would wish for more pain?" Elvis was amused by Elvis's serious tone. Elvis pinched Gu Mingming's little chin and kissed her alluring lips. "As long as I can meet you, I am willing to pay any price. I guess I probably saved the Milky Way in my previous life. That's why I can meet such good people like you and Leah." Elvis did not know what the Milky Way was, but If I can meet you by saving the Milky Way galaxy, then in this life, Leah and I will save him. In the next life you are not allowed to run. Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. Yeah, I won't run. I'll just stand there and wait for you. Seeing that Gu Mingming finally smiled, Elvis's heart softened and he said, I'll bring you to see my childhood, so that you don't have to think too much. Really? Gu Mingming's eyes lit up. Elvis nodded as a reply. Gu Mingming gave Elvis a peck on his face happily and the suffocating breath in her heart was slowly released. She knew that Elvis's past was not good, but it was precisely because of this that she wanted to understand and participate in it. No matter what terrible scars there were in his past, she wanted to use warmth and love to cover those sorrows. Chapter 809. After walking for a long time, Elvis stopped at a spacious area. His gaze was calm and emotionless. He pointed at the 3 huge pits in front of him and said, I was brought away by Peter after 1 month. This was the first place they went to. Gu Mingming followed Elvis's gaze and looked at the 3 pits in front of her. She was a little confused. The diameter of the pit was about 1.8 to 2 meters. Stretching her neck and peering in, the depth was about 1.5 to 1.7 meters. The pit was empty. There was nothing in it. Elvis bent his knees and sat beside the pit. He placed Gu Mingming on his thighs and pointed to the pit in the middle. 6 brothers, 2 to a pit. At first, they threw down the leftover parts and organs. Although the quality was not good, it was at least enough for us to fill our stomachs. But, as we grew older, the amount of food didn't increase. Instead, it decreased unknowingly. Until 3 months later, no one threw food into the pit for us anymore. At first, we didn't know what was going on. We even used all our strength to jump up, hoping that someone would see us and throw food down. But there was nothing. Other than the scorching sun, the wind, and the rain, nothing else happened. Then we heard our brothers' cries and wails from the pit next door, and the brothers I was locked in with started to look at each other as if we were food. Finally, the 2 brothers who used to hug each other for warmth finally bared their fangs and claws at each other. Then I won, he became my food and I became a monster. Gu Mingming's heart clenched tightly. Her hands started trembling uncontrollably. How perverted was Peter? How could he think of such a perverted way to torture his own sons? To think that he had just said that regardless of whether Elvis believed it or not, he was still alive because he had tried his best. Bullsh*t. Which father would watch his own sons kill each other and treat his own brothers as food? Damn pervert. Damn pervert. Elvis held Gu Mingming's trembling hands gently and kissed them. Silly girl, I am not telling you all this to make you afraid. Gu Mingming didn't say anything. She just looked at Elvis with heartache. But Elvis smiled very gently and said, although I feel very blissful to make you feel sorry for me. But don't be too distressed, I can't bear to do it. Gu Mingming took the initiative to approach Elvis's lips and kissed them, using her silent gentleness to soothe Elvis's old wounds. Or perhaps she was the one who needed comfort, right? Elvis enjoyed Gu Mingming's kiss, which made him very happy. Even those unbearable memories in the past did not have any special feelings anymore. In front of her gentleness, the humiliation that had once crossed his heart was like dust. It existed, but it did not pose any obstacle. Gu Mingming hugged Elvis's waist with her little hands and pressed her face against his chest. She looked at the huge pit calmly and her mind was filled with Elvis's helpless look when he was young. Her voice became even softer and hoarser. What happened after that? Chapter 810. Gu Mingming looked up, her eyes filled with anticipation. Elvis could not do anything to her. He scratched her little nose and said, you can listen to the story but you can't be upset. All that pain accumulated to meet you. If you pity me, I will become very pitiful. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and nodded. Elvis then continued, when there was only 1 wolf left in each of the 3 pits, someone finally approached this pit again. Unfortunately, they were not here to feed us but to fill the pit. Rocks were continuously thrown down from the top of the pit, smashing onto us, but we could not resist. The space we could move around was compressed by the rocks, while the pit entrance was piled higher and higher by the rocks. The narrow and cramped space made us more and more irritable and uneasy. Our claws dug out deep grooves on the stone walls of the pit, until one day the huge rocks piled up at the pit entrance suddenly collapsed. We had to avoid the huge rocks in the cramped space and quickly make judgments, before jumping out of the pit by stepping on rocks one after another. Out of the 3 pits, only 2 wolves came out alive. The other one was buried under a huge rock at the bottom of the pit, smashed into meat paste. And all of this was not the end, but the beginning. Elvis's gaze wandered around and he pointed at an empty space outside the 3 pits, saying, "The other wolf that escaped from the pit and I look at each other with hatred. In each other's eyes we are just food." Brotherly kinship and whatnot at that time had long disappeared. His injuries from the rocks were more serious than mine, so I was the one who survived in the end. In the 10 over years before I met you, I thought more than once, if I had known earlier, I would not have resisted and let him eat me up. This disgusting and boring life, it was fine to give it to him. But now, I'm really glad that I had that crazy desire to live, lucky that I survived no matter how dirty and unbearable the process was. If it was for you, it was worth it. Gu Mingming's hands that were hugging Elvis were trembling. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. Elvis hooked Gu Mingming's chin, his gaze as deep as the sea of stars, so deep that it made one sink in. "You promised you are not allowed to pity me." Gu Mingming shook her head, smiled and said in the most gentle voice, "I'm just very touched, so to meet me, you did such a brave thing." Brave? Ha, you can always think of some words to beautify those ugly things, but I like them very much. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's lips. It was a light and sweet kiss without any lust, only full of love and tenderness. Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's gaze that signaled for him to continue and felt rather helpless. He really did not feel that there was anything to talk about these past events. It was not like they were heroic deeds. But he couldn't deny that no matter how insignificant these things were, after sharing them with her, he had never felt so relaxed before. It was as if the rubbish in his memories was being poured out bit by bit with every word he said. His whole heart brightened up. Smiling, Elvis tried his best to use a relaxed tone to talk about the cruel past. "My eyes were bloodshot from killing and I was thrown into the wolf's den. At that time I seemed to be at the age of Jianghu and the rest. Hunger, pain and fear were all I had at that time." Out of topic. Today is White Valentine. Happy White Valentine's Day, baby. Remember to buy some chocolates in return for the flowers I received last month. If there's a boy you like, it's time to confess then. Today's update ended. Chapter 8:11. It was either fight or die. I had no other way out. Elvis rested his chin lightly on Gu Mingming's head. Countless details of the fight, biting, bleeding and escaping from death flashed past his mind. He only said one conclusion. That pack of wolves ended up as my food. And when I came out of the wolf cave, I had just turned 1 year old and had just transformed into a first-level beast. Gu Mingming could almost imagine what Elvis must have looked like after crawling out of the wolf cave. He must have been like the Asura who had returned from hell, crushing everyone's hopes and bearing the burden of destruction like Satan, descending upon every enemy. "Thank you for being alive." Gu Mingming pressed her face against Elvis's chest and listened to his heartbeat. She was not afraid, only glad that he had not been defeated in that kind of suffering and had waited until she met him. If she had missed him, how regretful would her life be? "Silly girl, why are you thanking me?" Elvis lifted Gu Mingming's little face and kissed her brow. His gaze was filled with an inexplicable sincerity, as if he was not only looking at his own female, but also at the only light in his life. "It was you who brought me out of that darkness and malevolence. If I had not met you, I would probably still be killing out of boredom, wasting away my life and waiting for death to descend upon me. You were the one who pulled me out from the abyss of despair. Why are you thanking me now?" Gu Mingming's heart pounded. She did not retort but just smiled. "We were both groping our way along the lonely and helpless path. Then we were lucky enough to meet each other. We lit up the hope in each other's eyes and lit up our lives together. We are a family that will always be together. So, we don't have to say thank you to each other, right?" Elvis's heart melted into water at Gu Mingming's words. He kissed the side of Gu Mingming's face, feeling speechless sweetness. "Hubby." Gu Mingming hesitated for a moment before saying, "I feel that I cannot forgive Peter, and then I will kill him." Elvis's reply was calm and certain, without the slightest bit of hesitation. It was as if Gu Mingming had only asked him to pluck a wildflower and he had said, "Okay." Gu Mingming shook her head. "That's not what I meant." Elvis glanced sideways at Gu Mingming and asked with a gentle gaze. Gu Mingming said, "Although Natalie and Peter are your parents, I don't want to stand on the moral high ground and demand that you must forgive them. Even I want to hack Peter into 1,000 pieces to vent my anger after hearing about your childhood experiences, not to mention you who had personally experienced it all. Only when a knife cut into his own flesh would he know how painful the bloody wound was. So, no matter what your decision is, I will support you unconditionally, because only you have the right to decide whether to forgive or not. But I want to tell you what I know. I'll let you make a decision that you won't regret while knowing the truth as much as possible, okay? Chapter 8:12. After listening to Gu Mingming's narration, Elvis's face did not show any signs of emotion. Even his heart was calm. His desire for familial love had long been extinguished in those 3 huge pits. Now that he suddenly had a mother who was willing to endure such humiliation for him, the only thought in his heart was, actually, there was really no need for that. Slightly heaving a sigh of relief, Elvis gently took the cup of water from Leah and fed Gu Mingming some water. Seeing that her lips had moistened a little, his brows relaxed and he smiled softly. Xiaoming, what do you want me to do? Elvis asked softly. Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment. She shook her head and placed her finger on Elvis's chest. She said softly, I want you to follow your heart. Whatever your heart desires, just do. Elvis held Gu Mingming's little hand and pressed it down gently. Her soft palm was placed on the outside of the second rib on his left side. A low and hoarse voice came out of his mouth and landed directly on Gu Mingming's chest. Other than you, there is nothing else in this position. Gu Mingming blushed slightly. She stared straight into Elvis's eyes as if she was about to be sucked into them. To be honest, I don't care about what happens to them. I don't think they need my forgiveness. But, if it can make you feel better by forgiving them, then I will forgive them. Gu Mingming lowered her head. She could not tell what was going on in her heart. Subconsciously, she still hoped that Elvis could forgive his parents. Because then he could truly break free from his childhood nightmare. But if this forgiveness was based on her feelings, was there any meaning to it? Sighing, Gu Mingming looked up and said, let's not talk about whether I forgive them or not. The most important thing now is not to let Natalie die just like that. Alright, let's think of a way to save her. Elvis had always been indulgent towards Gu Mingming. He would accompany her to do whatever she wanted to do, even if it was through a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames. Gu Mingming did not say anything more. She just obediently leaned against Elvis's chest and refused to leave. Elvis allowed her to rely on him. But since they wanted to save Natalie, they could not leave this place for the time being. Exchanging a look with Leah, they didn't say anything and just stood up and walked back in unison. Elvis was once a member of this group of stray beasts, and this base was an old one for the stray beasts. It had not been moved for decades and no regular tribe dared to provoke them, so the original caves were basically preserved. However, the cave that Elvis used to live in had already changed owners a few times. Now there was only a second-level jackal living inside. It looked sinister and wretched, but it was a sensible one. Seeing that it could not afford to offend the person, it tucked its tail between its legs and vacated the place. Elvis and Leah dug the cave deeper and more spacious. After all, they were going to stay here for a while and they did not want Gu Mingming to suffer. Gu Mingming sat on a tree branch outside the cave and watched her 2 men perspire profusely. She felt a strange softness in her heart. They had all experienced so many cruel things, but they had grown into the warmest appearance. This in itself should be something worth celebrating. Chapter 8:13. Gu Mingming blushed and glared at Ian. You are the one in heat. Your whole family is in heat. Ian snorted. I am the only one in my family. Gu Mingming was rendered speechless. She bit her lower lip and scrunched up her nose, making a threatening expression. Ian rolled his eyes in disdain. He leaned to the side in a sickly manner. You also know that the fox in your family will secrete a high concentration of fox seductive fragrance once it mates. The last time you guys got excited, the entire Saint Nazir was boiling for 3 days. If you guys continue to be affectionate here, Wabi-I and I will have to slaughter the entire stray beast horde to protect you guys. I did some calculations when I was patrolling. There are a few hundred of them here. It will take a while to chop them down like carrots. It will be very tiring. Do me a favor and have some integrity when you are abusing dogs, alright? Gu Mingming blushed furiously at Ian's words. She spat at him. I told you I am not in heat. Ian snorted disdainfully and said, look at yourself the way you look at your two males? Their eyeballs are about to fall out. Also, you are drooling so much that there are puddles under the tree. You see that? Isn't this called in heat? Gu Mengmeng instinctively touched her chin. There was no drool at all. You are just a cheap mouth. Be careful that no females will want you in the future. Ian shrugged. Anyway, there are already people in the Eagle Owl tribe who have made it. As long as I can produce cubs and not exterminate the tribe, I will have not let down my ancestors. Gu Mengmeng gave Ian a fake smile. If your ancestors knew that you are so unmotivated, they would probably crawl out of their graves and strangle you to death. Ian did not comment. Anyway, you just have to control yourself. Got it? So annoying. Gu Mengmeng turned her head and ignored Ian. Elvis and Leah were not weak. It was as easy as cutting tofu for them to dig a cave. Anyway, they were not going to stay there for long, so it did not need to be especially big. They just did not want Gu Mengmeng to suffer, so they took care of the details. In one afternoon, the cave had been completely renovated. There were no traces or smells of anyone else staying here before Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng inside. The sky was already dark and Gu Mengmeng was extremely sleepy. She only ate some roasted meat perfunctorily for dinner before falling into a deep sleep in Elvis's arms. The next morning, Peter rushed anxiously to where Gu Mengmeng and the rest were staying. Wabi was blocking them from the outside. Peter was not Wabi's match even in his peak condition, not to mention now that he was crippled. Moreover, he was here to ask for help, so he naturally did not dare to barge in. When Gu Mengmeng finally woke up and walked out of the cave while stretching, he shouted, "Great messenger, please save Natalie." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment before she walked up to Peter. The panic in his eyes was not feigned. It seemed like Natalie's condition was really not good. Gu Mengmeng looked down and said, "I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth." Peter gritted his teeth and stomped his feet, as if he had made up his mind. I'll tell you everything." Gu Mengmeng didn't reply and just looked at Peter quietly. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.